Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to another round of entertaining and highly exciting racing action in the sim racing magazine GT4 Challenge Season 8 has brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. Sponsored by Oris Digital, this is of course the series which aims to identify who is the master or mistress of the road car turned race car that is the GT4 category machine. And here today in our penultimate round of the season, round 7 of 8, where exactly we've made our way to. When you look in the background, it may look familiar to you. Indeed, we are here in the foothills right now of this picture of the Eifel Mountains in Germany. We're at none other than Nürburgring, and yes, today our drivers will be taking on the Nürburgring Combined. Indeed, that's the Grand Prix layout combined with the infamous Nordschleife loop. For our drivers, this is going to be the ultimate test of memory as they get ready to take on this circuit that has proven to be the maker and breaker of many a championship campaign, and of course, the annual host of what is the 20,000 Nürburgring is a circuit like no other when it comes to a test of memory and driving ability. We'll grand total 165 corners while drivers do take on its Gesamtstrecke VLN layout today. They'll need to make sure they've memorised every single corner down to every curb and every little bit of grass, because to touch the grass around here is going to prove highly risky and the barrier is not too far away. However, should they get it absolutely right, they'll lead the way at a circuit where overtaking comes at a premium, and most of the overtaking is done, whether it be on the Grand Prix loop or alternatively down the long backstretch to complete lap, which is none other than the Döttinger Höhe. But for our drivers, this is going to be a roundabout survival, and those who come away victorious, well, they may just see their championship campaign move a step forward towards the season finale. And indeed, coming into this round, as we'll brief you very shortly, we have two potential championships or three that can be wrapped up today. However, points need to go a particular way and our drivers need to make it to the finish line first, and that's going to be the key goal. Finish the round today and you're going to be a king regardless of where you finish in terms of your position. However, not make it to the finish line, and indeed it will just feel as though it's a little bit of a shame. And indeed, while these trips to Nürburgring only comes around once every so often in the GT4 challenge, and for other drivers they'll be getting ready to take on the test. But where are my manners? Allow me to welcome you all to this live broadcast from Circuit Side as you tune in tonight, catching all the racing action live from Circuit Side. The one place you can do so, and of course on youtube.com, and search for Paul Bush Productions or PWP, and you can be tuning in there. And if you are tuning in today, don't be shy, feel free to say hi and let us know how you're doing and who you're cheering on today as we try to get ready to take on the German circuit. In terms of our schedule for tonight, times in British Summer Time, that's BST or Universal Coordinated Time +1, UTC +1. As we can see, in approximately 8 minutes time, we're making our way into our qualifying session, slightly revised to a 20-minute session today, more on that very shortly. And we have got a slightly revised race schedule as well, in the fact that we will have a warm-up period between our qualifying and our feature race. When we do go feature race, it will be an 8-lap race rather than what will be our typical 60-minute race, and we'll tell you a little bit more about why that is very shortly. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's bring you up to speed with the story after round number 6, and how exactly the standing stand after 6 rounds of racing and the permutations of today that could see potentially our overall championship and also our team's champions crowned with a round to spare. So without further ado, let's begin the recap. Because as we can see, we've made our way today to the 26th of May. It's another Tuesday evening. It's a brilliantly hot one, particularly on the European continent, if that's where our drivers are based. And here in the commentary booth in solidarity, I've made sure not to turn on the air conditioning, because I do believe a number of drivers do not have the ability to have air conditioning where they are, and therefore I'm going to go through the hot temperatures with them, because I do believe a couple of drivers in their rigs are experiencing 35+ degrees centigrade already, and I suspect it's going to get even warmer as they get ready to go racing. But it was not a boiler of a race last time out in round number 6 at the Thruxton circuit in the United Kingdom. If anything, in Hampshire County, it was definitely a circuit that was very different, whereby we had a dry practice and qualifying session, but the rain that was scheduled to arrive at approximately 20 minutes into the race on the 12th of May, well, it came a lot sooner than I expected. It came 7 minutes into the race, and it led to a very interesting split on strategies. Now, most of our drivers, excluding one, had all gone for the slick tyres to begin the race, given the fact that we typically see our races be 2 stoppers, and those pit stops around every 20 minutes. However, there was one driver who opted to gamble by going to none other than the wet tyre, and that was Stephen Codman. However, the rain came a bit too soon in the end for Codman to be able to get the most out of it, because yes, whilst he was the only driver who was able to cruise his way forward after the wet tyres finally gripped up in the wet conditions that started to prevail, everybody else meanwhile was able to survive on the slicks long enough to the best part of about 10 to 12 minutes into the race, and therefore it meant the 2-stop strategy became just as viable as the 1-stop strategy, and that's exactly what Stephen Codman had to do in the end. He had to switch to a 1-stop in order to be able to make those wet tyres worth the gamble. But in all of that, in qualifying, we got to see what was the fast nature of Thruxton, resulting in some very fast lap times, and overall pole position was contested by Stuart Reynolds, Guy Edwards and Daniel Osler, and Reynolds took that pole position by a quarter of a second with a monster lap right at the end of the session ahead of Edwards, although Osler looked to be the most impressive early on in the qualifying session. As for the AM category, Stephen Codman managed to edge ahead of Mark Johnson and Rob Sharp, but the trio was separated by only 11 hundredths at the finish of qualifying in a very close duel. But in the race, as we said, the wet weather completely threw everything out the window that we knew, and what it suddenly meant was that while Stephen Codman slipped to the back and then made his way forward on those wet tyres, only need to know here to save the extra fuel to be able to do the one stop. Meanwhile, everybody else was forced onto a two-stop strategy, a bit of a premature one, was a short opening stint and then a longer middle and final stint. But at the end of it all, we saw some absolutely brilliant battles, particularly the huge battle for the AM win between Lee Berridge and Mark Johnson. They were both absolutely exceptional in the wet conditions, although in a battle under braking on lap 34 into the club chicane, Berridge was able to goad Mark Johnson into braking too late, which resulted in him going straight into the back of Neil's core. It forced core to retire and Johnson had to pit for repairs, and it brought to an end an incredible duel between the two that had lasted several laps. And it meant at the end of it all, Lee Berridge was able to bring home his first win of the season in the AM class and became the fourth driver in the AM class to take a win this season. But it was an absolutely brilliant story, of course, the AM lead battle. What else happened out on the circuit, many of you would ask? And well, we got to see as well an overall win in the top 5 relatively quiet. Indeed, the overall top 5 really did settle down as the race went on, although we did have a great battle for 5th place between Matias Penttilä and Ben Idris Abdullahi on the final 3 laps, which went in favour of Tem. But at the front of the field then, it was Stuart Reynolds who took the overall win and the pro win with it, and after taking that pole position ahead of Guy Edwards, well, you wouldn't have perhaps thought he was going to run away with it in the end, because given the opening 25 minutes of the race, we did see this weird transitional period whereby Guy Edwards gradually lost out at the start of the race. When the rain arrived, he really came alive, and the wetter the circuit got, Edwards got quicker and quicker. However, as the circuit started to dry up towards the end of the opening hour, whereby the rain stopped and it started to warm up the circuit, we suddenly saw Edwards starting to lose the pace on none other than Reynolds, and suddenly Edwards fell back into that second place, and Stuart Reynolds was able to run away to take his 4th win of the season by 8.5 seconds. But Guy Edwards looks absolutely ferocious in his McLaren, and we look forward to seeing whether he can maintain that momentum today. Well, of course, both our winners, Stuart Reynolds and Lee Berridge, earning their wins outright, and indeed in brilliant meritable honours. And as we come into this round, of course, it's time now for the ultimate test for all the drivers of the German circuit, the Nürburgring Combined. And after this round on the 9th of June, our season finale awaits us, and that'll be round 8 of 8 at Road America in the US state of Wisconsin. It'll be our 3rd round in the US of A. Indeed, we made a double header of it of rounds 2 and 3. We're making our way to a different American state to complete the story. But of course, if those are the big headlines from Thruxton, then how exactly did the standings stand after 6 rounds of racing? Well, here we can see in the overall Drivers' Championship, Stuart Reynolds leads in 127 points to 101 and Matias Penttilä. Now, for the Fury Simsport trial, we've done the maths, we've crunched numbers and brought out the abacus. What we can tell you is that for Stuart Reynolds today, all he needs to do to become a 2-time champion and back-to-back champion to successfully defend his title from Season 7 is he just needs to finish 15th or higher overall. And if he takes pole position in qualifying, then it just needs to be 14th or higher, and he will be your champion, because even if he didn't go any further, if he did not participate in the final round, in the fact, of course, we have 1 drop score this season, we'd win based on result count back if Matias Penttilä was to take the maximum possible score from what would be the final round of the season. So therefore, for Stuart Reynolds, there's very little pressure on. All he theoretically needs to do is survive the race today and make sure he doesn't finish any lower than 15th place. Being certain one thing for the Fury Simsport driver, he's not going to take that approach. He'll go all out if he can, and he'll definitely want to crown himself champion once again with a win on his side. Daniel Perry, meanwhile, in 3rd place on Paddock Motorsports, 90 points. Well, his game plan's got to be, therefore, to try and close up to Penttilä. And well, the story, of course, between what is Penttilä and Perry is that right now for Matias Penttilä, his momentum definitely has stopped to a degree, because he did miss the previous round due to personal circumstances, so he's lost the ground to Reynolds. However, still in reach of the championship leader, and he needs that 2nd win wherever possible to at least make himself safe versus Daniel Perry. And Perry as well missed the round at Thruxton due to competing in the GT Cup at Snetterton in real life circumstances and putting on some absolutely brilliant moves there. Unfortunately, we don't have the footage to show you. We wanted to try and show you that footage. Perhaps we'll get it to you for what will be the final round of the season. We did pick up the move of the day for making a move in his Ginetta G55 around a McLaren GT4, going around Coram Bend, the long sweeping right-hander, to complete the lap at Snetterton. And therefore, for Daniel Perry, definitely a very successful day in GTA class in GT Cup, securing himself 2 podiums. Well done to Dan for that. But now he comes back to the fighting of the simulator and looking to take on, of course, our final 2 rounds of the season. But from him, it's only a 3rd point to Neil's core for Satellite Racing on 89 points, and Guy Edwards there sits in 5th on 83 for 6M Motorsports, and he's definitely building up a lot of momentum. And could Edwards potentially make a late run for 2nd place and become the runner-up? We'll have to wait and see. He's only a point ahead of Matias Penttilä for Fury Simsport, and we have a further 2 points to Ben Idris Abdullahi. The leading AM driver overall is Rob Sharp, joint on points, however, with Stephen Codman at this point in time. However, Sharp, with the better results than Countback, will lead the way currently ahead of the Trackmaster Racing driver, but the Aburus Racing driver definitely feeling the pressure here when it comes to the overall standings, and we do have a sizable 16-point gap between them and Mark Johnson, the 3rd-year AM drivers, completing the top 10. He's equal on points with Rowan Worthy's Ollie Carwood Dean, and well, that coming about as a result of Carwood Dean's brilliant performance at Thruxton last time out, and Johnson meanwhile being relegated to the pit lane after his incident with Niels Core. And we can see then 12th place it's Daniel Osler on equal points to Paul Goffin, 42 points apiece between the two of them, and it's 41 points to Chris Jennings, who we hope to see back today. Then in 15th place, Dennis Van Beelen for Chicane Online Racing, had a bit of a frustrating time last time out. However, he keeps his head up high, and meanwhile behind him it's Martin Rendell, and then we do have completing your top 20 Lee Berridge, Ian Anderson, Niels Kula and Ryan Penny, and that brilliant result for Lee Berridge last time out for Boosted Motorsport, really boosting his points in the overall standings up to 37, and he's jumped into the top 20 for the first time in a long time this season. Ryan Penny in 21st place, it's Jules Gardner, who will not be on the grid today due to the fact he's currently travelling back from Canada. He did attend the Canadian Grand Prix over the weekend. I do believe got some absolutely brilliant snaps, and the Sim Racing Magazine tribe wish him a safe journey back and hope that he's all well and had a great time in Canada. I'm sure he did. Then we do see Heinz Matt, John Roberts and Andy Chell completing a run to 24th place. Unfortunately, we're not going to see Chell on the grid today, I do believe, due to a personal injury sustained in another sim racing series in the build-up to this round. So therefore, for Chell, I do believe he's going to be a spectator at the side of the circuit for Quake MS Motorsport, and I hope you feel better soon, Andy. And we do have equal points to Tim Gary Toole, Kim Such and Simon Povey, and yet scoring any points in the Oval Championship, Andy Marsden and Matty Wild. Meanwhile, in the AM Drivers' Championship, we can see that Rob Sharp leads the way for a Burris race on 112 points, 6 ahead of Stephen Codman for Trackmouse Racing, and Mark Johnson, meanwhile, a further 13 behind. Now, Sharp's lead has been slightly slashed as a result of Codman beating him to what was second place in the AM class last time out, and therefore it does mean that Codman right now is the man on a mission. How ideally he needs a win to level the score today if he can, or to get ahead going into the season finale, and Mark Johnson will, after his difficulties at Thruxton, after being in that battle for the win all the way through Lee Berridge, well, right now Johnson's got to go for broke. But keep your eyes out for Ollie Carwadine, the Rome-worthy driver, on 90 points and definitely looking ferociously quick, and he's coming to a world of his own in the second half of the season in his Mercedes AMG. Paul Goffin sits in 5th on 88 points, only 2 behind him as Carwadine moves forward, and Goffin falls slightly backwards for Sim Racing Magazine. It's a further 12 points to Martin Rendell, the privateer. And well, Martin's definitely put in some good stints so far this season. Lee Berridge sits in 7th, being catapulted up there as a result with his maiden win, 25 points going into the bank, and he'll be very happy about that because that moves him well inside the top 10. And right now he's ahead of Ian Anderson by 4 points with the See Next Tuesday drive followed up by Jules Gardner and Kim Such. The RS Racing drive only 1 point ahead of his teammate of Ryan Penny. Then we do have Andy Chell ahead of Heinz Mayer, only on result count back. And it's a further 10 points to Niels Kula, with John Roberts, Gary Toole, Andy Marsden and Matty Wild completing the AM Drivers' Championship standings. As for the Teams Championship, here we can see Fury Simsport lead the way on 209 points to the 169 of Satellite Racing. Now, Fury Simsport today, they can wrap up proceedings. However, we're not going to go through all the permutations because remember, the Teams Championship is consisting of teams of 2 drivers, and therefore there's a whole variety of variables that can lead to Fury Simsport taking the crown. But we will give you an update on it at the end of the racing today. Paddock Motorsport sitting 3rd on 132 points, the best part of a grand total of 37 behind the leading duo, but they are breaking away from Trackmouse Racing and seem to now be in a bit of a no man's land, and we're hoping to gain some ground on Satellite Racing before the season finale. Trackmouse Racing, they're just starting an inch away from 6-7 Motorsport, trying to keep them at distance, but Guy Edwards had his best result of the season, so it does mean that 6-7 are almost safe now from 6th place runners Rome Worthy, and it's a further 2 points to Axis Sim Sports, with a further 8 to Boosted Motorsport, and Sim Racing Magazine and RS Racing complete your top 10, and all the teams with it, and it's looking very tight in that battle for 6th place, as it is looking increasing tight for the battle for 4th. But of course, that's our standings covered, and therefore we need to talk a little bit about some prizes. And of course, we need to congratulate our round 6 medal winners. Firstly, our overall race winner of Stuart Reynolds, and we'll wear that overall race win. It does mean now he is a 4-time winner of the season, with 1 winner piece of Dan Perry and Matias Penttilä. Big congratulations to Stuart for his 4th win, a 50% hit rate so far this season if you add all the rounds up together. And then we do see it in the AM class, meanwhile, Lee Berridge there becoming the 4th name to take an AM win. Congratulations to Lee for that. The Safest Driver Award went to, Rob Sharp there, and it becomes his first Safest Driver Award of the season, and we've yet to have a repeat winner of that award, and well done to him for doing so with only a single instant point at Thruxton. But it really was the AMs who did a brilliant job of avoiding those instant points, with Lee Berridge only have 2 instant points, and it was 4 for Stephen Codman. They were the safest out there in the wet, the AM class. And meanwhile, the Move of the Race Award, it goes to a new name today. It goes to Oliver Carwadine. But how exactly did he get it? Well, ladies and gentlemen, here's the replay to show you exactly how he got Move of the Race in round number 6. So for Ollie Carwadine, he made his way out to Noble, chasing Paul Goffin in the inclement conditions. Now, of course, making the way all the way through Goodwood and down towards Church. This is all about trying to find an ideal line in the dry, let alone in the wet, and therefore they've had to avoid the standing water as well. But coming down towards Church Bend, what you'll notice here is that Carwadine holds a bit of a tighter line on entry, so you can see where the water is. And meanwhile, Goffin goes a bit wide as a result of touching a small, isolated patch of water on the outside of the corner entry. So as a result, Carwadine builds up the bigger pace here, but he has to use the raw V8 power of his Mercedes AMG AMG, battling the 6 cylinders of the Porsche, and looking around the outside, then into the braking zone up for the club chicane. Holding the brakes, they both went, but Carmody making sure to go the latest of the pair, and just about got the car stopped there onto the apex of the first part of the chicane, and in just about cutting it fine, Ollie Carbadine taking the move of the race, and well done to him for doing so. An absolutely brilliant move there, and a well-deserved reward for him. By that, ladies and gentlemen, let's now bring up to speed of our host circuit for today. Here's, of course, the Gesamtstrecke VLN-Laut to the Nürburgring Combined. Located, of course, this circuit near the town of Nürburg in the Ahrweiler district of the Rhineland-Palatinate state of Germany. A big thank you to iRacing.com, not just for their brilliant simulator, but the absolutely fantastic track maps contained within it. And as we said earlier on, 165 corners. Many of these, of course, household names. You're a big fan of the Nürburgring. And we're not going to walk you through a circuit diagram, but you can see in its full splendour there. And we've got our drivers going into qualifying right now, and very shortly we'll get some on-boards with our drivers. But in terms of rules coming to this round, we've got a slightly revised rule set for today. Drivers running the iRacing fixed setup, and fuel loads have been restricted to 75% rather than the typical 42%, and that guarantees they can do half the race, i.e. 4 laps as a minimum, on that fuel tank before they do need to pit, and therefore this does become a one-stop round today rather than a conventional two-stop. However, drivers have the option to fuel save if they so desire and see if they can go a 5th lap potentially, so there's going to be a bit of strategic flexibility built in there. Qualifying-wise, and lone qualifying format shall be used, so all the drivers take to an isolated instance circuit today compared to the open format we've previously used, and drivers have 2 flying laps over a 20-minute period. So therefore, whichever expires first, the 2 laps or 20 minutes, by the end of the 20 minutes we will have all the lap times in, and if the drivers haven't set a lap, then we'll go to their previous best lap, and they haven't set one at all, then they'll start from the very back of the field. Then we do go racing. The race shall commence via a double file running start as an addition of racing in the GT4 category in real life, and indeed in this series, and there are no mandatory pit stop requirements, although we are expecting drivers to come in for fuel at some point. Each driver has 1 fast spare available should they need to use it, and a driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 8 or more instant points. Should they get to 25, they will be disqualified. Meanwhile, hopefully we don't see that, and all race stewarding shall be conducted post-race. With haste, we make our way back to circuit side, and as we do, well, as we said only moments ago, qualifying now in full swing, and all the drivers out there at the moment as we do see the Ford Mustang there of Dennis Van Beelen roaring its way all the way out to one of the highest points of the circuit, indeed getting towards the highest point as he gets ready to make his way for the very challenging Mutt curve, the fast left-hander, where if you carry too much speed into the corner, you end up going wide to the barrier, but don't carry enough speed, and you lose all your momentum in the run up towards Stillstrecker Bend, the hairpin that he's just about to reach. Now, as he makes his way onwards, we do look to the YouTube chat, and, well, we do say hello. There's a Bright Star Fox who says, looking forward to seeing Berridge take the green hell, and well, we look forward to seeing how he gets on, and very happy to have you as Bright Star Fox, and I hope you're doing well as well. And speaking of Lee Berridge, here he is right now. His BMW M4 Evo of the G82 model, and of course, man with momentum at the moment in the AM class after that brilliant result last time out, and he'll be hoping that he can make it another win today and see if he can really pursue a top 5 in the AM Championship before the season is done. But coming on through here, what exactly can we expect in this qualifying session? How important will qualifying be? Well, the interesting thing about qualifying here at the Nürburgring, given the length of our race, is that qualifying will be relatively important because track position is so valuable. Now, overtaking is highly possible on the Grand Prix loop, but given we are running the Gesamtstrecke VLN layout, we are only running the touring car layout of the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuits. Therefore, we do not have to run all the way down towards the Dunlop Kara hairpin at turn number 8 that you see on the Grand Prix loop. Instead, we cut it off early and double back ourselves towards that Bilstein curve very early on, and also at Van Bogen. So what it does mean for our drivers, they only have effectively around about 9 corners before they end up on the Nordschleife loop, and after that, they pretty much run nose to tail. Though overtaking is not impossible over the loop, it's just very hard. As you can see, the fact the circuit is really only too wide at the best of times, and that's if you're willing to risk it. But meanwhile, those who do not wish to risk it, they'll try and stay behind their rivals all the way onto the straights, of which we do, of course, have the long run down the Döttinger Höhe right at the back end of the Nordschleife loop, and that may give them the opportunity to try and make a move there. So we could see some huge battles on slipstream at that point. Of course, you sit behind a rival over the entirety of the Nordschleife loop, could you save a lot of fuel? And that could be a big strategic gamble to go for. So therefore, qualifying will be important to dictate where you're going to be in the relative order, but it will be on track where you're trying to get the job done, but you need to be very precise where you get the move done. And in terms of tyre change in the pit lane, this is one of those circuits as well, whereby if a driver feels confident on fresh tyres, they can gain a whole few seconds over the course of an entire lap. In the fact, we have got a lap here that's in the region of 9 minutes to a rough approximation. Well, spending the best part of 20 seconds station in the pit lane, whereas spending the best part of, say, 30 seconds station in the pit lane, 10 seconds is not as necessarily going to make as big of a difference as it would at a much shorter circuit. So that'll be a point of intrigue as well for the drivers. But Bennett, he just absolutely, he makes his way around and on towards the Döttinger Höhe. Well, very shortly, we'll be getting on board lap one of our drivers as they go on to their second and final flying laps. They do start qualifying from the end of the Döttinger Höhe, or essentially where you would come out onto the circuit if you were going around it in your own car, the Touristfahren circuit, as it's known, although I must admit my German pronunciation isn't 100% accurate, so therefore if there are some Germans in the YouTube chat or those who speak German fluently, feel free to critique. I've got no problem about it at all. I studied Germany at school up to GCSE level, and after that I haven't touched German since. But I do know how to say none other than bonjour and auf Wiedersehen, although to be fair, it's guten Tag, not bonjour. Decided to go for a bit of an only fools and horses reference there, if anybody does remember. Good old bonjour, no sir. But right now, there's no fools and horses here today, unless we're talking about plenty of horsepower, and who exactly we're going to get on board lap with for our flying lap. Well, Matias Penttilä makes his way onto the start-finish straight. As he does so, we jump on board with him for a flyer. Has made his way down towards turn number one, and as he does so, well, the Fury Simsport driver first across the line. He's from the neighbouring Netherlands, but here today goes on to the brakes as he hammers the brakes at the 150 metre board and all the way down in towards turn number one. Now rolling off here in first gear, and what you'll notice is he goes into the AMG arena, and he does so coming up in towards turn number two. A very tricky corner to get right because it's a blind summit apex, and it's a corner that's uphill to downhill on the exit. But keep it over to the right and then brake as late as possible and set that run to a very tight apex at turn number three. You want to stay tight on exit to open up turn number four. As Tim comes out the corner here, stamps the throttle down, immediately coming for the kink of 5, and it's only going to be a short run before he arrives at the touring car hairpin at turn number 6. Onto the brakes he goes, and as he comes down the gearbox all the way to second gear, the corner slopes away, it goes into a depression, and it goes back uphill, so that really does annoy the suspension of the car. Now in towards the left-hander here at turn number 7. Made his way on through, and now over towards Bilstein curve he comes, and at this point having to keep it nice and compact here to the apex curbs, that way he can get on the power nice and early. It does exactly that, and his tyres all warmed up and the fuel delay still be in the car, and now go on the attack all the way up towards the chicane. As he gets ready to go into the braking zone, will it be the VDOL chicane? Yes, it will. So it'll be the medium speed version of the chicane, not the low speed version that you would see in Formula 1 or open wheel racing. And he goes left into right here in third gear, and now, whereas he'd normally go right to continue the lap on the Grand Prix loop, we've gone to another one. Instead he turns left here at turn 13, as it's nicknamed, or T13, and now making his way in towards the Sabine Schmidt curves. The Nordschleife loop begins. Now at this point, touching curbs is a no-no because of how high they are, and even though the ride heights of these cars have been raised, understand if you touch those curbs and suddenly the suspension will be jolted around and you can end up in the barrier. But keeping it absolutely pinned as he makes his way in towards the Hatzenbach complex. Here he goes, left into right, onto the brakes, coming all the way down to third gear. Apex speed of 77 miles an hour, but he's got to keep that line nice and smooth as he mounts the curve. The Mercedes can take these curves a bit more aggressively compared to, say, the Porsche 718 Cayman. And he comes out on the left-hander, running a little bit wide there as he heads in towards Hoheiken, but gets it reset just in the nick of time, and now going all the way on towards Quiddelbacher Höhe. Flat out, here he goes, and all the way up towards Flugplatz, and well, at this point it really is take a deep breath and test your ability to be committed. Keeps it nice and tight to the wall, lets the car drift over to left here, and now into the fast right-hander. It will be a little bit of lift off the throttle there just to settle the front end down, then back on the throttle immediately as he clears the first apex of Flugplatz, and now flat out all the way out through Cottonborn and towards Freudenkreuz corner. Now, as he makes his way through the depression, flat out, you'll notice he gets towards top gear very soon, heading upwards to 160 miles an hour. Ben Freudenkreuz, the fast left-hander, and here it's a lift off the throttle, because you need to settle the front end of the car down, because the car lifts up into the air, but keep it nice and tight over to the left, because now he'll stamp on the brakes, going all the way through Arenberg Bend. Down to second gear, 64 miles an hour as he makes his way on the apex, and now in towards the depression. There is none other than Pussbrook, in towards Fuchsrohr, and then compression corner. But here as he makes his way through the forest, and in towards what will be the compression now, you feel that the car all suddenly gets pushed up into your chest, and up the hill he goes, and in towards the left into right here of Ardenau Forst, and at this point it's trail braking all the way, and keep it nice and smooth, keep that line absolutely perfect, and as he comes through left into right in second gear here, won't drop to first, there'll be too much wheel spin in his Mercedes, and a lovely line out there as he now brings himself all the way up towards Metzgetsfeld. He gets a bit of a breather before he gets to Metzgetsfeld, but the one corner that catches many a driver out, myself included, and as he heads in towards that left-hander, and making sure to take a late apex there, no brakes, just lift off the throttle, and now onto the brakes here as he sets up the run through Cullenhard. Left into right he goes, and in towards the aforementioned corner, and onto the brakes here. Downhill, you brake a lot earlier than you need to, based on a flat corner, but there downhill, you have to brake 150 meters from the apex. Now coming out, it's on towards the Spiegel curve, or the S's. Make his way left into right here and completely pinning the throttle, and in towards Dreifach Rex, the triple right-hander, and here it's all about that second apex, and nails it absolutely perfectly and lets the car roll out and in towards Versailles Bend. Brake here for a corner you cannot see. You're braking about 200 meters on the apex, down to second gear. Now left into right. as he comes out of the right-hander. It's in towards Brideside Bend. Also known as going over the bridge as he makes his way in towards that left-hander. As he does so, braking at the end of the entry curve on the right-hand side, down to third gear. And now roll on out, bring the car to the left-hand side, fighting with a bit of power oversteer as he heads in towards an X-Mule. The corner, which can cause the rear end to snap out there because you go through a bit of a bump in the middle of the corner. But no rear end coming loose there for Tem, all the way to the front of the car, making sure it stays that way. As he goes on towards Bergwerk Bend, well, this is the corner that makes or breaks the end of the first half of the lap. Again, the fact now he's got to nail this exit. It's flat out uphill as he comes out. You don't really want to touch that exit curve unless you can help yourself. And we'll tell him they're just about keeping it together as he now goes flat out all the way up towards Klosterol and then Mutkurve Bend. But as he does so, he gets a bit of a breather here. This is one of the more pleasant parts of the circuit for a driver, where you can really take a moment to breathe, to pause and think to yourself, how well have you done? But you won't have too long to contemplate as he heads through Kesselchen and in towards Klosterol Bend, and you'll see the signpost on the left-hand side for it. As he comes in towards the right-hander now, it's in towards Mutkurve. Here, the left-hander. He looks his right-hand side for his marker, using the curve on the right-hand side as his turning point, and riding it there, dropping to 124 miles an hour at the apex, and now flat out all the way towards Bergwerk. Riding the limiter, practically in fourth gear there to make sure he keeps a smooth line, and as he brings it over to the right-hand side to set up his line in towards Stillstrecker hairpin, down to second gear, and keep it nice and tight. You don't want to go too deep. The corner otherwise flows away from you, and the car will be pulled away with understeer, but he gets that absolutely spot on, now towards the Caracalla Carousel, or just typically known as the Carousel. Going through the corner, sponsored by AMG, and as he comes through the bend, and keeping it in the carousel shape, and on his way out there, and now full throttle all the way out towards Poston 147. But as he comes in towards the right into left here, and he's going to have to lift off the throttle potentially a little bit. In fact, no, he does not. Use all the road. That's full confidence for Tem. Some will lift, but not Tem. And he goes left into right. He does have to lift off a little bit there as he heads up the hill and in towards Hoax Bend. Onto the brakes he goes, down to third gear. Next in out, and it's going to be downhill from this point onwards. He's got to the highest point of the circuit, and at this point it really feels like you're on a roller coaster coming downhill. So through a Headswig he goes, right into left here, and at this point all the corners come in quick succession. This is the test of memory, as he now heads up the rise and in towards Whipperman Bend. Going through the right complete blind summit, you want to stay nice and tight to the apex to let the car flow out, and now bring the car downhill through the left-hand of best back bend, and in towards Brunchen Hill comes shortly. But before he does, of course, he has to come through the right-hander and Brunchen Bend, also known as YouTube corner, because it's typically the corner where a lot of crash compilations are filmed on YouTube. As he comes on out, lovely line through Brunchen, and now in towards Ice Curve. The corner whereby, if you cut it too early, you're going to know, because you're going to hit that inside curve, and the car's going to be launched into the air, but doesn't quite do so, and Tem absolutely nails it as he now makes his way through Flansgard and Eins. Going through left into right here, over the jump, that's been smoothed out in more recent times, and now in towards the right hand there, and heading in towards the Stefan Beloff S, also known as Flansgard and Zwei, and as he comes on through here, dedicated, of course, the man who set the lap record those many years ago, the absolute incredible exploits of Stefan Beloff, and flat out every step of the way here. Tem will be fully committed at this point. This is the moment where you completely lock in as a driver. If you haven't already, you've got to nail that sequence. There's no room for hesitation. Now making his way through the right hand and up to Schwalbenschwan's Bend, the fast left-hander there, where it's all about avoiding that inside curve, but running onto the outside curve as much as you can, and in towards the Kleiners Carousel. And as he does so here, a small carousel, and he can come out to the corner quite quick as he does. Carries a lot more speed compared to the Caracalla Carousel from earlier on. Now in towards Galgenkopf Bend. The corner right now where you want to nail that, and then coming down on towards the Döttinger Höhe. Here it's all about getting the best possible exit, nice and tight on entry, lift off the throttle, and now stamps on the throttle, uses all the runoff area that he's allowed to do. And right now for Matias Tem, it's a moment of breathe. You completed the Nordschleife loop minus what is 3 quarters. How well have you done? Well, we'll have to wait and see. Now, if you're wondering why he's staying over to the left-hand side here, we should say, well, the reason for this is, in reality, the tree line you see on the left-hand side actually shields the cars from the wind. And while we do have wind simulated on iRacing, and should the cars be getting a headwind, not a direct one, but one coming from the south towards the car, those trees will actually shield the car from the wind, and therefore they carry a bit more speed. As he comes underneath the Bilstein Bridge, 166 miles an hour, he now makes his way through the left into right of Tiergarten, and then home rain awaits him. And onto the brakes here, through the right into left he goes, and for Matias Tem, that'll be his lap completed. What a lap it has been. A big thank you to Matias for that. But what's it going to be here to complete his qualifying session? Is it going to be pole position? He was 4 attempts off the initial pole time set by Penttilä, but as he comes across the line this time, he puts himself on an 8-minute 27.314, a very impressive lap. But what does Matias Penttilä do and respond? And what can Stuart Reynolds do as well? Well, Reynolds has crossed the timeline. He does not improve. Niels Kor, meanwhile, that's a very impressive lap there from the home hero, an 8-minute 26.750. And, well, meanwhile, Matias Penttilä can only do second place. The Ford Mustangs are coming in full force today. And I suspect that V8 are really powerful in the Döttinger Höhe and also in the uphill run out of Bergwerk Bend. But meanwhile, the AM class, Lee Berridge, he's currently the fastest of all the AMs after his second lap, an 8-minute 31.476. Mark Johnson, by comparison, the best part of 6/10 behind him. But they do have a sizable split to the rest of the AM field, as headed by Stephen Codman, who are currently in third of class, but 12th overall, with Rob Sharp not too far behind. And with 1.4 seconds the gap there. But whereas 1.4 seconds at a circuit such as Thruxton, that would be huge. Here at the Nürburgring, 1.4 seconds is just literally a mini sector of the circuit. And there are tons of them. Well, in fact, so I double-checked the information we're getting fed. We have 12 overall sectors to this circuit, but drivers normally like to compartmentalize it into about 24, if not 30 sections. And so therefore, understandably, one small mistake, and you really do notice the temps being lost, but those temps, well, they are from minor mistakes typically, and whole seconds are lost and made through multiple sections of the circuit. Behind man, 8-minute 56.834, so he goes 18th ahead of Kim Such at the moment, and we do see the Roanworthy car make its way down, and it does so. What's it going to be for Such here? Well, in fact, the Oris Digital car, I should say, and it's 8-minute 58.131, so he's 1.3 seconds off of Mayer, but I suspect Mayer and Such just waiting to get lapped home. We're still waiting on two drivers to finish their qualifying sessions. Ian Anderson is one of them in his Aston Martin V8 Vantage, and as he comes on through, well, of course, the car with its wonderful V8 power plant, the German power plant there from Mercedes, combined with a turbo system, as he makes his way towards the timeline. What's it going to be for Anderson? And the answer is going to be... he's currently 6th place in the AM class and 15th overall. Can he go higher? What a lap there from Ian Anderson. 8-minute 33.593. And that puts him 3rd in AM. That's impressive. He splits the AM field then into 3 parts, because he's well clear of Stephen Codman by the best part of what is 6/10 there, respectively. But he still is the best part of what is half a second off of Mark Johnson. And Benny Abdullahi, well, he's not been able to improve. So he's parked up there, and that is qualifying complete, ladies and gentlemen. But with qualifying complete, what a session we've had. And Niels Kaur taking pole position here today. A very impressive pole lap from Kaur, no doubt about it, and he's going to be absolutely ecstatic about that. But qualifying, of course, it's just one part of the story, but quite appropriately there for Niels Kaur. He'll be absolutely ecstatic to have taken that pole position at his home circuit. Well, congratulations to him for doing so, just edging out what was there Matias Penttilä and Stuart Reynolds. But now we have our 5-minute warm-up period. So this is an opportunity for our drivers to get a top up a liquid refreshment, or alternatively take just a brief breather, or one of the two, or they may need to take an all-important bathroom break. Now, we are missing a couple of other drivers. Unfortunately, we are missing Guy Edwards, and well, he did climb into his shed. And unfortunately, it's a bit too hot for him, so therefore he's not racing this one due to the fact he's not feeling 100% to race in the very hot conditions that he's experiencing. That's absolutely fair, and we cannot begrudge a driver doing so, to be fair. Indeed, it is a very warm day today, and all the drivers have been reminded of the fact that whilst the racing may not be real, the fact that they will be in their rigs and feeling those temperatures in their households. Remember, particularly a lot of these drivers based on the European continent, and well, at least in the United Kingdom, but I do believe it's a theme across Europe in general. Households in countries on the European continent typically built to keep heat in rather than get heat out of the house, because the idea being that particularly when most households were erected between the 1960s and the 2010s, they were built to the specification of insulate first and release heat later, whereas now, of course, in the modern era with climate change and global warming and other phenomena, we are starting to see what is that shift now more towards houses that disperse heat quicker than they can insulate for it. But understandably, all drivers definitely feeling the heat today, and I wouldn't be surprised if a few fans will go out for a few drivers. But of course, this will be a test of endurance for all of our drivers, no doubt about it. And we are missing Gary Toole here as well due to personal circumstances today. But it's great to see a grand total of 19 drivers, I do believe, making the trip to Germany. And well, as a result, all absolutely dialed in. And we look forward to seeing how they all do get on. Now, we're just double checking in with regards to today, because I do believe, in fact, our drivers may have been given an extra fast repair unless I'm mistaken. We are just checking in on that at the moment, and well, we do know they've got at least one fast repair, but I think they may have been given a second one just in case if anything should go wrong. We are just trying to find out. I do believe we are seeing 2 fast repairs have been given to our drivers today as well. So they've got 1 extra fast repair compared to normal, so we do apologise for a bit of confusion there, and there's only 1 fast repair when they do have 2. And as a result there, it does mean our drivers have the opportunity and to essentially just avoid making those big mistakes, or if they do make mistakes, well, they can always get it back together. But with the fast repairs available, of course, if you do make a mistake here, you have got that tow time as well. And in fact, I double check again. I don't think we've got 2 fast repairs. I think it was discussed, but I do believe, in fact, the decision was taken not to put in extra fast repairs. If the driver does get it wrong and they have 1 fast repair, well, they'll learn from the experience. If not, the race may be over, but we'll have to wait and see. But as everyone heads on around, All right, now Daniel Osler definitely getting himself all set, looking to be the quickest out there. He won't complete the entirety of this lap. You can understand me, given the fact the lap is 8.5 minutes approximately for the fastest drivers out there. But to be fair, I don't think he'll be too upset about that, because I think he'll be enjoying the chase that he's having with Lee Berridge at the moment. And Berridge in that BMW M4 Evo looking very quick. And this BMW in the second half of the season has really been enjoying the circuit. And it's been a racing act, and I think he'll be very happy that it's right back up there once again. And if so, well, I do wonder how exactly he'll get on and whether he can find a way to be able to absolutely make the jumps there that he needs to in order to be able to take the AM win. As he parks up and toes back to the pit lane, well, we do see Daniel Osler heading onwards as well still, and Mark Johnson makes way on around in his Aston Martin V8 Vantage, and the Trackhouse Racing driver hoping that today at least things can be just a little bit better for him, because he's definitely had a bit of a frustrating last couple of rounds after taking his maiden win, and that maiden win coming back in none other than, I do believe, as we double check our records here, we did make a note, round number 4. So crazy to think that was the best part of 6 weeks ago when we did see Mark Johnson take that win at Mount Panorama, but after that a second win has yet to find his grasp. The only driver in the AM class who has taken multiple wins this season in category is Rob Sharp, although Rob Sharp right now parked up in the pit lane and out of the car, so we won't be able to see his car. But everyone absolutely set, and here's a quick reminder to you guys and girls tuning at home, of course, if you're sat there right now thinking to yourself, I might need to go get a top up a liquid refreshment, I might fancy a snack after the race has started, well, go grab it now in preparation if you need to take that quick bathroom break, because after we've had our formation lap, and indeed we're only having a small formation lap, it's only going to be about 1.5 minutes from where they start on the Döttinger Höhe to when we go green flag racing. You won't want to miss a second here of round number 7 of the Sim Racing Magazine GT4 Change Season 8. And sponsored by Oris Digital and brought to you by iRacing, because for all drivers they'll be absolutely itching to try and prove themselves a ringmeister, but only one can do it in AM, and only one can do it overall. But who exactly is it going to be? Well, it's time to find out, ladies and gentlemen, as we head to the grid for our 7th round of the season. And so as our drivers make the way onto the grid, this is how they'll line up for our penultimate round of the championship. As we can see, Niels Core, the home hero, takes pole position with an 8-minute 26.750, and then taking pole by 2 attempts ahead of RD Simsports' Matias Penttilä. That is absolutely nothing in the battle between the German and the Finn, and in the end it was the German who gained the upper hand. But just behind them, a further 3.5 attempts down, Matias 10 for Fury Simsport. We rode on board for the entirety of his lap. It was a very good lap, and it's the first time this season he's out-qualified Stuart Reynolds, his teammate, the Fury Simsport driver in the number 1, who, to be fair, retained his number 1 status. He was to finish where he starts currently, so there's not too much pressure on him. But behind the Briton on row number 3, it's Benny Abdullahi for Satellite Racing and Paddock Motorsports' Daniel Osler. And then we do see Lee Berridge for Boosted Motorsport starting 7th there, and pole sits up with that late lap, and an incredible one at that. And he'll be in the company of Mark Johnson at full throw. It'll be the battle of the 2 AMs to get us underway. The Trackmaster Racing drive then followed up by Dennis Van Beelen for Chicane Online Racing, and well, he was only 4 attempts ahead of Guy Edwards, who completes your top 10. Outside the top 10 in 11th place, and in fact, Guy Edwards, of course, I do believe withdrawing from this one due to the heats, therefore we are down to 18 starters, and well, Guy Edwards still looking impressive in that McLaren, even so, but a shame we won't get to see him on the grid. But Ian Anderson will start in 11th place as they start for C next Tuesday. Thirdly, the AM drives, the Scotsman, in the company of Chris Jennings for Axis Simsports. Then on row number 7, it's Stephen Codman for Trackhouse Racing ahead of Rob Sharp for Boris Racing. And we do see on row number 8, John Roberts for Boosted Motorsport and SRM Sim Racing Magazine's Paul Goffin. And then we do have Ollie Carwadine for Roanworthy and his teammate of Heinz Mayer line up on row number 9, and then completing what would be your 19 car starting order if they all started, it would be Kim Such there for Oris Racing. But of course, we've lost Guy Edwards on this grid, so therefore all the drivers behind him get promoted to place. So 18 drivers get ready to get underway, ladies and gentlemen. 9 rows of machines. One tell you one thing, as this formation out gradually makes its way down towards what be Tiergarten, or for Niels Core, if he can get a good start and make an early break, he may just be able to control and dictate this race all the way through to the very end. But 8 laps, and understandably, over the course of this distance, all the drivers will need to keep their cool. This is going to be as much a test of consistency as it will be pace. But for those at the very front, when it gets very close, suddenly it becomes a game of cat and mouse, and racing up over and down the Eifel Mountains is no easy task, as Lee Berridge, the AM pole sitter, and Mark Johnson just behind. Well, of course, Mark Johnson, that second win, he's chased after it, but Lee Berridge, can he ride the wave of momentum from Thruxton? Can he make it 2 in a row and suddenly scupper the chances of many a driver in the AM class? Rob Sharp, when he ideally would like to take another win to extend his championship lead, and he's starting just alongside Stephen Codman, his main rival at the moment. But Mark Johnson, should he land that second place of the win, he may just put himself right back into the fight. But as Niels Core leads the field for the final quarter, it's over to Core and Satellite Racing's Mustang to take us away for the race today. And it's lights out, away we go for 8 laps of racing here today in round number 7 of the GT4 Challenge as they roar the way down towards turn 1. A good start there for Niels Corp, and Matias Penttilä tried to get the jump on him. It didn't quite work out, and Penttilä versus Tem. It's going to be 2 wide down to the braking zone for the opening time. As they come on down, Lee Berridge taking a cheeky look up the inside there. That's not going to work out, but just trying to cover off his assets as he heads up in towards Mercedes AMG corner. And as he rolls his way on through, we can see that Daniel Osler back on the inside. Osler right now going on the attack, and the Fury Simsport driver enjoying the handling of his Porsche already. But John Roberts a bit further back, a bit of a quick start for him, getting ahead of Rob Sharp, or has he? As Sharp tries to come back down in towards turn number 3, and the Aburist Racing driver losing out to Stephen Codman at the start, and he doesn't want to lose out another place if he can help it, trying to hold it around the outside, and we can see John Roberts there backing off, a bit of power oversteer, and suddenly the car comes loose, and that's going to cost him more time as Paul Goffin makes his way forward, and Ollie Coverdine just behind, but into the braking zone. Roberts goes back up the inside of Goffin there to make sure he loses the place, and Roberts takes it back. He's back in the 6th in the AM class and 14th overall. But at the front, Niels Core as he gets ready to leave the Grand Prix loop, albeit they've got a few more quarters. Well, Tem and Penttilä have stopped their battling for now, but a great clean start from more drives and plenty of 2-3 wides for the opening couple of corners, which you would expect from the Mercedes arena. But now they all have to start to settle down. But can anybody make a last gasp move before they do head onto the Nordschleife for the first time? So we see a bit of a mistake there from Goffin, taking a bit of gravel coming out of Bilstein Curve and coming up the hill now towards Vidal. Well, Carbadine getting closer and closer, but lifts off the throttle there and decides not to go for it. I think a wise move. But for Niels Core, going defensive down to the Nordschleife loop, he feels pressure from Tem as they go onto the loop for the first time today in race trim. Coming through now, this is a game to follow the lead, and should a mistake be made by the car in front, you have to be ready to react, and sometimes that reaction is just simply making sure you do not get added to the mistake of the driver in front. You don't cause a domino effect. So for all the drivers now, this is about being very alert, being very aware, but of course the Nürburgring as well takes a very different complexion when you're behind another car, because suddenly all the markers you use are obscured by the car in front, and therefore you've got to react, and you have to obey the concertina effect law, which is that when you're running behind another car, you have to back off a little bit earlier and turn in earlier because of the dirty air that's washed over the front of your machine. But Lee Berridge has definitely had a very solid start to this race. When Dennis Van Beelen between himself and Mark Johnson, he might be able to make a little bit of a break. That BMW M4 has been looking very quick so far today, and Johnson right now, will he play the game of just fuel save behind? Because we know that Aston Martin is very thirsty on fuel, so therefore he'll want to try and mitigate that weakness where he can. Meanwhile, we can see here, we've got Penttilä under pressure on Reynolds. Now, Reynolds, of course, your multi-time winner of this season, and looking to become back-to-back champion here today. All he's got to do is finish where he currently stands, but he'll want to be on that podium. He will also potentially want to take the win. As they head in towards Freudenkreuz, well, there won't be a change for now. Daniel Osler, meanwhile, stuck behind Benedict Abdallah. He thinks about the move going in towards Arenberg, but that's not going to happen. The Fury Simsport driver waits and watches for that Ollie Carbadine on the back of Goffin, and Goffin holding at bay for now, but different machinery showing different strengths. The Porsche, of course, a little bit quicker through the sweeping curves, but it's on the straights when Mercedes comes alive. And down the hill, you'll see the battle of V8s here, the Ford versus the Mercedes at the front. As Core and Tem so close together at the moment. Matias Tem getting ready to pounce, but in towards odds now forced. Where can he go? And the answer is not very far at the moment, as he stays right on the back, but they all get a bit too close there. And Matias Tem has to back off before running into the rear of the Mustang in front. And Penttilä now gets involved a bit more. You're right on board with your third place man, with Stuart Reynolds only 2.5 tenths behind. And here they come in towards Metzgertsfeld. And this point completely blind as he goes to turn in here, Penttilä. He's just got to literally base on muscle memory and what the car in front does. He's got to keep an eye on that. And well, he does absolutely brilliant, does the RD Simsport driver. And now down in towards Callan-Hard Bend. Through that right hander, you can see there the slight difference in lines. Him having a little bit understeer as he approached the apex in that Mercedes. That'll be the dirtier for Core's car, plus also the tyres still warming up. That front left a little bit exposed at the moment, not warm enough. Penttilä, meanwhile, more respectful to the tyre, given that the aero wash, and therefore deciding for RD Simsport just take it easy through dry fat Rex and heading to their siphon. Well, he won't make a move, but you can definitely see that Penttilä, I think, has been putting in some practice in the build up to this round of running in the air of another car. He just seems to be a lot more comfortable, and it has been one of his strengths over the season. Oh, Oh, who's that running wide? That's Daniel Osler coming out of there, Siphon. As he heads in towards Brightside Bend, that's going to drop him away from the leading quintet. So therefore, Osler in 6th place. Now has Lee Berridge of close company. Albeit the Porsche driver was trying to put the pressure on the satellite racing machine of Idris Abdullahi, but now he's put himself under some pressure instead. As they head up towards Bergert Bend, no change there, but Ollie Carwadine still caught behind Paul Goffin. But we have had one change over the Nordschleife loop, and that is Kim Such passing Heinzmeier. But we get a replay of those moments and plenty more, and we do go on to our second lap. Let's stay with the lead lap for now, as we do see Cords, Penttilä, Reynolds, and Idris Abdullahi now making the way up towards the curve. And at this point, well, now this is the big drag race, an uphill. They'll be keeping those gears as long as they possibly can. They'll head to the red line in 5th gear most likely, and Penttilä here glued to the back of Tem. He's going to look around the outside to get the inside into the curve. Will he be able to get it through across the roll bend? Here he goes. He's going to be brave, it's Penttilä, and on the inside here will Tem just back out for the first time round. No, not quite, and in the end they do touch a brief moment, but the move is made there, runs the limit to the grass, and Tem will get the place back from Penttilä, but in the end right on the limit racing between the two of them, and Matias Tem showing to Penttilä he's not just here for decoration, he's going to make sure that if he loses the place, well, he's going to lose it with the stoic defence that he's known for. So therefore Matias Tem holding on, but Niels Core right now understandably, well, he can make one or two choices, the Satellite Racing 4 Mustang leader. He can either choose to try and break away, alternatively he can just stay at the head of the pack, but of course he has to keep in mind on the Döttinger Höhe, some of his rivals behind may be keen to take the lead for themselves. But if he can save some fuel early on, it will help him out to a degree. As meanwhile, Lee Berridge has been able to make his way past Daniel Osler, and Osler losing out as Dennis Van Veen and Mark Johnson and Ian Anderson all queuing up behind. And in fact, Anderson's getting a bit closer to his fellow Aston Martin of Johnson, so he's had a good start, Anderson, and he's making some headway. Let's wait and see what exactly happened to what was Daniel Osler to lose out. There was that brilliant battle between Tem and Penttilä, and that battle is not over yet, I suspect. Now it's Stuart Reynolds going on the attack here as we jump on board with the second of the Mercedes in the procession. But the Fury Simmersport at number 1 here. You can see the brakes going on additionally for Penttilä as he made his way over the rise. And what I think they're just a little bit worried perhaps about the rear of the car letting go, and therefore opting just about keep it together for the time being. And well, of course, these tyres, they do take some time to warm up, but even once they're warmed up, these GT4s, compared to how they previously have been, these cars now are a lot more loose on their rear ends, and they can very easily go around, even with a front engine rear-wheel drive. But remember, if the engine's in the front, all the weight's over the front of the car by default. You don't have too much weight in the rear. But meanwhile, going for Iceback Bend, that's going to be a move here from Daniel Osler versus Lee Berridge. Now, who's going to back out into Flansgaard and Hines? And well, it is going to be Berridge who just backs out there, but Osler wants the place back, goes into the jump, airborne for a brief moment, and your 314 Fury Simsport stroke Paddock Motorsport machine making up a place there as he now heads in towards Flansgaard and Spy on Stefan Belloff air. So, oh, goodness me, jumping through the air, and Daniel Osler, well, that made my heart skip a beat, ladies and gentlemen. The tight line there is what you never do, and you've just seen why, because the car goes completely airborne, and in the end, it's how you control the car when it lands that dictates whether you're going to go spin into a barrier or whether you're going to have one of the biggest brown trouser moments of your racing career. And well, Daniel Osler definitely having the brown trouser moment there, and thinking to himself afterwards, don't do that again. But as he attacks coming out of the Kleiner carousel, a bit too early on the throttle. Right now he's trying to push, he wants to get away from Lee Berridge, and I think that's what is upsetting him at the moment. And indeed, it's just shaking his concentration a little bit, is that Berridge is proven to be an absolute nuisance. But also, of course, he's got all the speed in the corners in that Porsche, but hasn't got the speed on the straights as he runs a little bit wide coming out of Gallencott Bend, and onto the Döttinger Höhe they go. But here's where Berridge now will build up the speed as we ride on the dashboard of the boosted Motorsport 41. And well, does Berridge just simply slipstream his way onwards, or does he fuel save behind, or does he bump draft? He's going to bump draft here, so Berridge decides actually not better, just tuck him behind and give him a little bit of a push. Meanwhile, Penttilä and Tem, they're going to try and guide it once again as they come underneath the Bilstein Bridge, and Penttilä gets ahead, so the Ford Mustang driver moves into second as he heads through Tiergarten in towards Hohenrain. And meanwhile, Matias Tem tries to come back on the brakes, but that's not going to work out. Berridge behind Osler, and you can see Van Beelen queuing up there, so the Am-Drive sandwich between the pros, and then Johnson and Anderson following suit with Chris Jennings and Stephen Codman for close company. As it will make the way out. Well, oh, goodness me, that's a cut of the corner for Daniel Osler. He's got a slow down to burn, and as he does so here, Osler not looking comfortable in the car, and I think Berridge will try and take the place off him down towards turn 1. Osler lifting off the throttle there to burn his slow down, but as he heads on down, he burns it, but he also loses 6th place overall to Berridge, and we'll have to try and get that back as quickly as he can. But after one lap of racing, as they head through the AMG arena once more, it's Niels Core ahead of Matias Penttilä. Then we do have Matias Penttilä in third, ahead of Stuart Reynolds and Idris Abdullahi. That's your top 5 all-pro drivers. Then it's 7 seconds behind to Lee Berridge and leader. He's gained 1 place since the start, but right now fighting with Daniel Osler for 6th place. The pro driver trying to come through. He's going to look from inside to outside there. It's all part of the switchback as Dennis Van Beelen tries to cheeky peek up the inside of Osler. The chicane on the line, race and drive, thinks about it, but then into the braking zone they go for the touring car hairpin, and as they do, whilst they're constantly probing around the outside at the moment, he's really going for it, and will ride in the back. The paddock motorsport driver doing a brilliant job, but right now things are not coming to fruition, but he's giving it everything he's got here. And remember, Daniel Osler, not quite a winner this season. Dan Perry, his teammate for Paddock Motorsport, did take the win, and that was all the way back at VIR. But right now, the 314 driver here enjoying himself about it, no doubt. As he makes his way in close behind, right now looking to go on the attack. But is it going to work here as he continues to get closer and closer and closer? The answer is going to be no. He's going to have to wait his turn. And right now just being held at bay as he makes his way through Vidal, bouncing over the curves there. And now he's got to play patience versus Berridge. Further back, we do see Osler, Van Beelen, then Johnson, second of the Yam drivers, ahead of Ian Anderson. Gap to Anderson open up to 1.2 seconds there, as they all try to use as much of the Nordschleife pit lane exit in order to be able to open up Sabine Schmidt curved, named after the infamous queen of the Nürburgring and the lady who almost managed to take a Ford Transit van around the Nordschleife loop in sub 10 minutes. But meanwhile, that's going to be not sub 10 minutes there if it's constantly in the wall, and that's Daniel Osler grinding to a halt. And well, that's going to be a tow to the pits there for Daniel Osler. Something's gone very wrong, and that's just before he was able to make his way in towards Hudson-Buck. And well, sadly for Daniel Osler, his race comes to an abrupt halt and he tows to the pit lane. And that's going to be a sizable tow from that point on the Nordschleife loop, and therefore he's going to lose quite a bit of time. But to be fair, when you do tow here, it's worth going back out after the first fast repair as a minimum, just because of the fact anything can happen, and suddenly you can gain all that time back if a driver gets it wrong elsewhere up the road. And lo and behold, and forget if multiple drivers get caught out, and suddenly multiple places can be gained, but hopefully we don't see that. But I do feel for Dan, because that's definitely not the way he's wanted it to go. But in towards Schweidenkreuz right now, go our leaders as they come through that left-hander once again. And well, you can see Niels Kors starting to gap Penttilä, who's finding himself under pressure from the Mercedes and Thruxton Reynolds, the two Fury Sport teammates, as Matias Penttilä runs a bit wide there, but Reynolds is not able to capitalise as they head down the hill as much as he would like to. I think he might be on the radio to his teammate here, although would he be on the radio at this point, given they need maximum concentration? Perhaps not. Instead, what you might be doing is simply playing patient. I wonder whether we'll analyse how this lap goes and potentially say to Tim on the run towards Döttinger Höhe, perhaps we need to swap the places around here. I may be faster at this point in the race, but the team will have to make that decision, and they'll be looking at all the data as they head on the round, and indeed, they're still only a third of the way through the second lap. But as we look from the off-board there from Stuart Reynolds, we do take a look back in time, ladies and gentlemen, some of the big moments from the start of the race, including, of course, what was an absolutely brilliant race start through the GP Loop's opening few corners. So as we did go green flag race, and the blimp camera picked it all up in splendid fashion, and Niels Kors had a brilliant start there, and you could see that in the end, Matias Penttilä and Matias Penttilä end up fighting for second instead. But as Kors led the field into the opening braking zone, it was Penttilä on the inside doing everything he could to hold the position, and behind, in a bit of a scramble, almost 3 wide diagonally, that was Lee Berridge trying to force the move on Reynolds and also Idris Abdullahi. Further back we did see Paul Goffin have a bit of a slow start, but to be fair, right on the back of Rob Sharp and John Roberts, and as they made the way in towards the AMG Arena, we got to see a lovely move there from John Roberts attempted on Rob Sharp, but Sharp came back at him in towards turn number 3. And the British Racing Porsche driver very careful not to go too deep on the cold tyres right at the start, and that gave Roberts an opportunity to come back here through turn number 4. But Sharp was able to get it together, and with Roberts having a bit of power oversteer moment, suddenly that battle was done and dusted. But that battle played out early on, and then we had some big moments a little bit later on, including, of course, what was this for Kim Such versus Heinz Mayer. And this was on the Nordschleife loop, where Heinz Mayer was making his way in towards Odd Now Forced, missed the braking marker there and went a bit deep, and as he pulled it back together, let in was the Oris Racing car and passed there Kim Such, sister team to the Rome Werby machine, and will decide not to put up the fight there and just get himself back in the game. And meanwhile, we also did have this brilliant side-by-side moment between Matias Penttilä and Matias Penttilä. This was the battle, of course, heading up towards the fast left-hander of Mutkurv, and well, in the end it was going to be Penttilä who was going to try and hold it around the outside to inside, and Matias Penttilä did not give in, but it was Penttilä who was able in the end just about to keep it within track limits, and I say that liberally, but 10 got back ahead right at the very end of that run up towards Still Strecker Bend. But what a battle between the two of them. But then, unfortunately, we did have a bit of a moment for Lee Berridge versus Daniel Osler, and this was Osler, I believe, getting it wrong in towards the Caracola Carousel. But what exactly went wrong for the Paddock Motorsport driver? He carried too much speed into the carousel, and in the end actually leapt out of it. So that's how Berridge got the move made. And then we did have a bit of difficulty with Osler on the start of lap number 2. And, well, in the end, this was coming down in towards Hatzenbach. But before they got to it, Berridge ahead of Osler. Osler took some grass, went to turn in. And unfortunately, once you touch the grass, the car understeers, went to the barrier, and the front left suspension completely collapsed. And that was his story complete, just like that. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's back to your live racing. And as we do come on back, well, for Daniel Osler, an easy mistake to make, but such a painstaking one to have to suffer from. And we'll still plenty more to come. As right now, Reynolds still looking to poke his way past Matias Penttilä if he can. The two teammates here working together. And, well, as we do say hello to Shadow of Pain, Leet, or 1337, who says almost a Porsche Space Program. And indeed, that's definitely a great way to sum up how Daniel Osler approached the Stefan Bell of S. And we also do say hello to Thomas F there, 9514, who says SR Encore for the win. And, well, some absolutely crazy moments out there, and I think that's what the sheesh response is for. But as the drivers continue the way, this second lap, well, they're almost what is towards the end of it already. They'll have another 6 to go after this one. Strategy will start to become a bit of a theme, but I don't expect we'll see anyone pit at the end of this lap. We may see some go for an undercut at the end of lap number 3 if they think they can make the fuel tank work for 5 laps. That'll be all part of the fuel-saving game. But the fuel tank they've got definitely enables them to do a one-stop, even if it is a symmetric one-stop where everyone would have to come in on lap number 4. But then, of course, there will be the question mark of whether a driver takes tyres. And remember, in GT4 racing, tyres and fuel are done simultaneously because we are racing to the IMSA rule set, not the World Endurance Championship or FIA rule set. And what it does mean there is that when you put the fuel in the car, you're very likely to have time to change a couple of tyres, but there'll be some extra time required to change all 4. Is that extra time going to be appropriate to have the fresher rubber all the way to the end? I think some drivers will say over the course of this 15.2 mile circuit, yes, the fresh rubber will be valuable. But I suspect there will also be some out there who say, well, I'm very happy on certain tyres, and if I only need to change the outside ones. But Bright Star Fox had better conditions than the last race, thankfully, and indeed no rain here at all today, and none the forecast. And can you imagine if we did do rain? We did talk about it in the Sim Racing magazine administration in the build-up to the season, and we jokingly said, what if we were to put rain on at the Nordschleife? And everyone immediately went, as much as it would be a big challenge, it may be a bit of an excessive challenge, because of course it could rain at one end of the circuit and not rain everywhere else, and then it becomes a game of survival at certain parts of the circuit, and at other parts of the circuit, if you were on a wet tyre, you'd be on a tyre that would be disintegrating very quickly. It wouldn't be right for anyone, and that's why we decided not to go real wet weather race here. But we picked it for Thruxton, of course, and it was an absolutely splendid round, and also VIR. But right now, Stuart Reynolds really exhibiting the patience game here as we ride on board with the number 1. And what Reynolds will be doing at this point, understandably, is just lift off a little bit earlier. He can save some brake life, some brake pad life, but also he can just simply save some tyre life there by not putting as much heat towards the front of the car on the anchors. And, well, going on to lap number 3, and no change this time around other than Daniel Osler's unfortunate demise to the pit lane. Otherwise, everybody carried on. And fastest lap of the race then, an 8-minute 27.116, set by Niels Core. He has got a gap now of 1.1 seconds. That gap, it's not a big gap at the moment, but it does give him some safety down the Döttinger Höhe and also in the run from Bergwerk up towards Mutt Curve, where the slipstream of these cars is felt to a second and closing, and it becomes more and more dramatic. Meanwhile, a bit of a change here for what will be Heinzbauer, making it very clear he wants to go around the outside of Kim Such. In fact, so much so you'd think he was exhibiting social distancing at this point as they make the way onwards, but I think he wants to give as much space as possible, and in the end he will slowly outrun Such underneath the Bilstein Bridge, but they're going to be too wide as they come over the rise. And now down towards the braking zone they go, and Matt does get back ahead there for 9th place in the AM class. As he does so, well, Snatch meanwhile tucks in behind, and that'll be a change of position at least for now. But what's going on in the AM class? Well, here's Lee Berridge, and after shaking off Daniel Osler, or unfortunately Osler sent himself to the wall, well, Dennis Van Beelen, the pro driver, is still there, but you've got 1.5 seconds back to Mark Johnson, who has now started to drop Ian Anderson. So Anderson was able to stay with Johnson, his fellow Aston Martin driver, for the initial lap. It does seem as though now Johnson is up in the pace, and Anderson not quite able to stay with him. And we do see Chris Jennings, a pro driver, in amongst the AMs. And well, the Axis Sim Sport driver there, good sim out there in the number 22. One of the big fan favourites on any grid is on Chris Jennings, just a simple reason. Absolute gentleman racer. I've had the pleasure of meeting him in person once last year. And I'll tell you one thing, absolutely great to meet him. And much like he drives on the circuit, he's a very respectful racer and indeed a gentleman. But as he heads onwards, Stephen Codman, a whole 1.5 seconds behind. And currently in fourth place in the AM class, ahead of Rob Sharp. Now, intriguingly, if things were to finish as they currently stand, well, Rob Sharp would still be your championship leader going into the season finale, but his advantage would be essentially halved to around 3 points. And suddenly, Mark Johnson, if he was to finish in second in AM today, it would put him a bit closer to the leading duo of Codman and Sharp. So you really would have a three-way fight for the AM crown on our hands. Be interested to see if that's the way it goes here. And of course, for Johnson, he would like the win if he can off the lead berry. He'd like his two rivals to stay where they are, and he would then like to take that win. If he can do so and take his second win of the season, he'll bring himself right back into the thicket right at the very end. But it's been so close in the AM class this season, and indeed so many drivers have been in the pursuit of the podium, and so many have been in pursuit of wins. Matias Penttilä with Reynolds behind him, and Reynolds this time a lot closer coming out of Vlugplaat. At this point, the Fury Sport pair, well, I think there's a question mark on what they're going to do at this point as Reynolds backs off once more, heading in towards Schwanenkreuz Bend, and they make the way through. Right now, definitely, it's going to be a position whereby I think Reynolds is worried about losing some time. And Tem goes a bit deep, touched the gravel slightly, but I think the game was to let Reynolds go there on Bell Bend. So they do swap around. And, well, Sonny, Reynolds up in a third place. But meanwhile, Ollie Carwadine, oh, that does not look happy, Mercedes. That's gone wrong, and I believe that's just going into Hoheiken Bend. And as a result, he's now lost out. He hasn't lost a position, but 8th in AM and 15th overall. He's got a lot of damage to that car, and he's going to lose out a lot of race time. And I suspect he's got no meatball flag on the car, but with the damage he's picked up, as the front two wheels go airborne there into Vlugplaat, as to be expected. That's why you normally lift off the throttle there, unless you're committed. You can keep a bit of throttle going. Right now, Ollie Carwadine, well, the rear of the car missing just as much as the front. Can we get a replay of it? Yes, we can, ladies and gentlemen, and this explains what happened. So a bit of a moment for Carwadine as he wove his way, and as he did so, well, the rear was already missing from the car by looks of things. So I think he's already had a moment with a barrier, and the rear of the car let him go, and then straight into the barrier there. So he's lost the rear bumper already. I don't think we've caught that on camera, so something's happened to that rear bumper, but then the front of the car definitely been compacted in as well as a result of that spin going through a Hoheiken complex. So it explains what's happened to Ollie Carwadine, but he's going to try and carry on as best as he can. As he does so, meanwhile, Neil Score, your leader at the moment, and the Dr. Dabber Satellite Racing Machine, well, 1.1 seconds to ahead of Penttilä, but Penttilä keeping him within distance, and Stuart Reynolds released by his teammate Matias Tem. What can Reynolds now do? Is he the one who's going to be the one with all the pace? He is already a 4-time winner of the season, whereas meanwhile Dan Perry and Matias Penttilä have had the other 2 wins, but can Reynolds become a 5-time winner on his way to sealing his second crown in a row? Well, he's not got long to go. It's a steal that crown. If things were to finish they currently stand, he'd definitely take it. Even with Penttilä finishing in second place today, it would not be enough. And Reynolds will be mathematically impossible to catch going into the season finale at Road America, but I suspect he'd still turn up to it, because of course he'd want to make sure that Fury Sim Sport bring home the maximum possible points. But right now, things were to finish as they currently stand. I'll have to double check what that would mean for Fury Sim Sport, and well, we will get our calculator out in the meantime. We'll have to see with that. We'll give you an update on that very shortly, ladies and gentlemen, because of course there's still plenty of time to go. But here comes Reynolds, looking for a move in towards Mutkurve Bend, and well, Penttilä goes to the middle of the road, and Reynolds decides at last moment, no, it's not for me. Backs off there, and Penttilä goes a bit wide, hits the barrier, and as he glances it there, he gets away with that one. He's already had 1 near miss, that's the second there, and well, they normally say 3 strikes and you're out, and Matias Penttilä has used up 2 so far. But the Ford Mustang driver, they're really getting away with that. That could have been an absolute nightmare moment, but it wasn't quite so. And meanwhile, you see Tem 2 seconds behind, and Benny just Abdullah here, further 8 attempts to drift. And right now, all mistakes are starting to creep in, but that's confidence in all of these drivers, and that's also fuel coming out the car here, and the mental pressure. But meanwhile, going a bit deep, that's Tem. He's run up high in towards the carousel, and Benny just Abdullah, he won't say wait twice. He'll go all in for the move, and he moves up their Satellite Racing drive into 4th place. So suddenly, Satellite Racing now started to get things together. That's looking very impressive for them indeed, and with Neil Score leading the way, I think the confidence there is definitely going to be very much in his favour. But things for the finish as they currently stand with regards to where our drivers in Fury Sim Sport Satellite Racing are, well, it would mean that in terms of the delta between the two teams and whether we would see Fury Simsport have a 48-point advantage, no, we would go to the season finale and we would see things go to the wire then at Road America based on mathematics tonight. They would be leading by 43 points, but it would go one last round. So let's wait and see what is to come. But the drivers right now definitely making sure they don't make any mistakes as best they can. And it has gone a bit wrong with Penttilä, but a brief crash with the wall, he'll get away with that. And meanwhile in the AM class, AM drivers seem to be just that little bit more tame. But as they roll the way onwards, well, right now we can see that. A bit of a run wide for none other than Dennis Van Beenen as he continues to go into the attack. And, well, if you're wondering why, of course, Dan Perry is not here today, well, we have just had an update to say that his sim rig is in a different country to him at the moment. And, well, not quite sure the story behind that, but he's not going to be at his rig, understandably. So, therefore, for Dan Perry, he'll be more a spectator this one versus what is an actual race of it. Unfortunately, the other member of Paddock Motorsport, Daniel Osler, well, he's out of this race due to that big hit to the wall going in towards the second lap. As these drivers head on through, we're definitely going to take a quick sip of water. And as the Ford Mustang of Niels Core roars its way into Döttinger Höhe, and the gap this time versus Stuart Reynolds, a second. So Reynolds right now, well, I'll tell you one thing, the whole back end of the lap, the final third coming downhill from the Eifel Mountains, Reynolds has been the quicker driver. And as we look on board, well, that gap is closing little by little. It was a second at the start, a long back stretch, but now you can see on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, it comes down to 9/10, and it's not necessarily because the Mercedes is the quicker car, it's because he's getting that distant draft. But the closer he gets to the course, exponentially it will start to rise. Well, the idea is when you're very close, you get a huge draft effect. At longer distances, you get a rather minimal effect, but it increases very rapidly. And the number one getting now within 6.5 tenths. He heads in towards the final few corners, and with it the braking zone there for Tiergarten and Rain as he comes on through the right into left. Well, 6 tenths of the gap now. We'll have to wait and see what's to come next. But meanwhile, here we do see Dennis Van Beenen and Lee Berridge swapping places on around, and that is going to be, I believe, Lee Berridge there falling behind Van Beenen, at least for the moment. But as they come through in towards the last couple of corners and onto the brakes, well, Berridge's thought process here will definitely be one whereby he's got Mark Johnson in, Anderson right in the back of him once again. So the swap there between Van Beenen and Berridge has brought the lead battle of the AM class back into contention. And Johnson and Anderson definitely been on a bit of a back foot so far. I wonder whether Berridge now is feeling the pressure a little bit. But of course, letting the pro driver go, it has its benefits as well as its downsides. One of the benefits, of course, is the fact that he can now follow another car around. He can use the tow to save some fuel. But the downside is the fact that he does now have direct exposure to his AM rivals. And should he be quicker than Dennis Van Beenen, he'll want to get ahead of him before they go on to Nordschleife. Otherwise, it'll be follow the leader. Unless he's willing to risk a major overtake. And, well, if he's able to do that, then suddenly it might feel a bit more comfortable. But I suspect Berridge right now is going to stay put and just trying to make sure that Johnson and Anderson don't get past. And we look back from the rear of Berridge's 41 BMW. The boosted motorsport driver does also see Chris Jennings join the train. And Stephen Codman, the full place AM driver, is only 1.1 seconds away from joining it as well. So the AM top 5 is gradually getting pushed back together here. Well, Rob Sharp, meanwhile, not able to stay with that leading quartet of the AMs. He's currently 6 seconds off of Stephen Codman. But I suspect this is a bit of a story right now whereby for Sharp, he's just trying to make sure he keeps it on the road. I don't think perhaps the confidence is as high or the ring knowledge is as high as others. But to be fair, this circuit is not for all. It is a very difficult circuit to master. So much so, trivia-wise in iRacing, actually implemented a feature whereby when you practice for this circuit in your own closed session by yourself, you can actually set reset points on the circuit whereby you can reset from sector to sector rather than have to start that from scratch every time you make a mistake or indeed you want to change part of the setup. That's Niels Core and Stuart Reynolds stayed very close. Matias Penttilä here looking for the moon. He just Abdullahi. That's going to be very tight. But he's going to look around the outside here too. Wide they go as they make the way through Hudson back in towards Hoheiken. And then before they get to Hoheiken, Matias Penttilä will take that position. Lovely move there from Temini. Just Abdullahi giving him space. We've seen some great battles between the pairs so far this season, and that's another one in the tick list because it's always a great day when we see those two together. Now, as I look out my commentator booth window, I've just heard the roar of Ollie Corradin's Mercedes leave the pit lane, so he's decided to get the repair in and I think put all the fuel in the car. He's been forced to do it with the damage he picked up on lap 3. But right now, we look to the front of the field because Core and Reynolds, well, we thought that Reynolds might have all the pace to get right onto the back of the Core, given how quickly he closed up to Penttilä and past him. And well, no surprises there then as they go up towards the left-hander, Oshwed and Kreuz. and we'll go back it off, and so does Reynolds in turn. But right now, Stuart Reynolds is absolutely flying out there. And I don't just mean because he lifted 2 wheels off the road for a brief moment. He is absolutely on the attack, and Reynolds' sectors at the moment, personal best and fastest sectors of everybody until he's called up to course. That tells you something about the way this race is going dynamically at the moment at the front of the field. Stuart Reynolds, he's got the confidence in the car. He saved the fuel as well that he's needed to, and he's going on the attack, but in towards odds now forced. Niels Core right now holding on. And of course for Niels, no win so far this season. He's come close to it in a couple of rounds, but for him, right now, this is all about just holding position. Of course, many of you may remember at Bathurst, his post-round interview where he had that frustration having the slow start, losing what was third place right at the start of the race. It put him back to fourth, and by the time he got back into third, 2 laps later, the leaders already put a 5-second gap on the rest of the field, and he had the pace to match Reynolds and Penttilä. But the problem was, at Bathurst, where it's long straight, it became a race of slipstream and working with your rival to get away from the rest of the field, and that's exactly what Reynolds and Penttilä did. Penttilä took the win in the end in a brilliant battle between himself and Reynolds, but Niels Core, it really was one of those moments whereby I've not heard the satellite racer drive as frustrated with that in a long time, but I can tell you one thing, he was frustrated with that. But right now I think he's going to be absolutely enjoying the fall. He's leading, he's got the championship leader right behind him, and he is controlling this race, at least on track. But will he be able to control it in the pit lane as well? That's the other fault. But as they leave their siphon behind, and that gap staying nice and close, Penttilä gradually encroaching upon it. Well, Tem and Idris Abdullahi are 6 seconds behind at the moment, and therefore, as they fall away, we could be starting to head in towards three-way fight for this win. But from them in towards Brideshow Bend, we can see that Idris Abdullahi on the back of Tem. No way in at the moment as he makes his way over the bridge, and then they go in towards that left hand and rolling the one around. Well, right now, Idris Abdullahi just making sure that he keeps it absolutely safe and sensible. But as we can see, with the gap between the two less than 2 tenths as they're headed towards Bergwerk Bend, well, I wonder here whether Idris Abdullahi will go for a move away. He'll wait for it up towards Butch Curve, and he's going to go for the latter approach as we ride on board with the satellite racing machines. It powers his way up the hill, and a little bit of run wide there from Tem, taking a bit of grass for him for good measure, albeit just the left-hand side edge tyres going off, not the whole tyre, so therefore he's able to get away with it. But that shows you the pressure that Tem's on under at the moment. After taking what was that 3rd place in qualifying, well, right now definitely relegated to 4th place in fighting as they head up the hill. He gets in closer and closer, and to give you an idea of the speed, well, right now holding maximum revs at 147 miles an hour. He's not going to go for the move as Idris Abdullahi. In fact, he decides just to coast in behind and save a little bit of fuel, and plays the smarter of the 2 options here, and will decide that fighting 2 wide through here is going to be not worth it. Into a still striker they go, and further back, Lee Berridge. He's still got Dennis Van Beelen as his pace car, if you will, the chicane online racing driver, holding position in 6th. Head of Berridge in 7th, but the AM leader, as Johnson and Ian Anderson, have just slipped away a little bit. So Anderson's fallen away from the top to an AM, but it's 1.2 seconds. He could very quickly get that back. Only takes 1 sector for that time to be found. Chris Jennings and Stephen Codman there or thereabouts. There is Codman, and well, he's got to find his way past his fellow Mustang, but a pro Mustang of that Jennings, where he has a chance here to attack for the AM podium. At the end of this lap, we suspect there's going to be several drivers making their way towards the pit lane. And therefore, for our drivers right now, we're just getting halfway through this race, an absolutely huge achievement. And if you are wondering about the graffiti on certain parts of the circuit, well, there's multiple reasons for that graffiti. We'll come back to that very shortly, however, as we have just had Kim Such close to the pit lane, and we thought Lee Berridge there was getting ready for a potential move for post at 147, which if so, I would have been very curious as to how he would have gone for it for a very tight section of the circuit, but he was literally on the rear bumper of Van Beelen, and Van Beelen sliding all over the place as we ride aboard with Berridge. As he makes his way through the corners right now, will Lee Berridge absolutely keeping it all together. We just noticed our overlay has just, I think, had a bit of a crash, ladies and gentlemen. So we are going to try and reset our overlay, as it has just given up on us slightly. But please don't worry about that. We will get it back at some point. But it has just had a bit of a technical blip there. This does happen every so often, and well, we will get it back as soon as we can. And we will then get some replays of the footage of the moments that have happened to some of our drivers. We've had a few incidents quite recently, and with some difficulties for drivers out there, no doubt about it. But as all drivers carry on, more fighting to come between drivers, no doubt about it. But I think the fighting now will definitely come in the pit lane, as we do look to Mark Johnson just following on behind. And as he carries on, Mark Johnson right now, much like many, still putting the hammer down here, trying to keep it together as best as they possibly can. But Johnson enjoyed himself out there. And Ian Anderson is caught right back up. And, of course, that's the situation when all these drivers get very close together and suddenly it all becomes a bit of a processional train. But to the front of the field, Niels Kor barrels his way into the Döttinger Höhe this time. And as he does so, what's it going to be for Kor here? Can he hold his position? Can he feel safe? Or will he be under a bit of pressure? We'll have to wait and see. But definitely right now, it looks as though he's feeling that pressure behind as these drivers power the way down towards what will be the next complex scores of Tiergarten and Hohenrain. As he gets ready to go in towards that braking zone, will we see a move here from Reynolds? Reynolds thinks about it, but it's going to be Kor covers him off. Kor decides to go to the inside here, but Reynolds is going to go around the outside. They'll be too wide on the way in, and in the end on the brakes, Stuart Reynolds just sneaks ahead. And well, Reynolds there being brave and audacious, but he absolutely makes it work. They're lovely move from Stuart Reynolds, and that gives him the position. And now, will they come into the pit lane? No, they're going to go another lap. So as they tour another lap of the circuit, well, Stuart Reynolds goes on to lap number 5, and Niels Kor still there behind, now looking up the inside. So Kor's going to try and come back for it here. Will he be able to get this done? And the answer is going to be as they head onto the brakes. He's going to go in. He's going to see if he can get stopped in time. He goes very deep as Niels Kor, and Stuart Reynolds, therefore, will retake the lead as Matias Penttilä gives Kor the space to rejoin. And Reynolds right now in the lead of the race, in control it would seem. As meanwhile, Matias Tem into the pit lane. So he comes in from 4th place. Again, apologies that we don't have a broadcast overlay at the moment. That is something we are working on in the background. But we can see there Tem's car going up onto the jacks. And well, as he does so, well, Tem deciding it's time to simply get a fresh set of tyres on and split the race in two. Johnson also comes in. So does Dennis Van Beelen. They all make the way down. Ian Anderson comes in. And also Matias Tem and Stephen Codman. I think I've said Tem twice. And well, Rob Sharp and John Roberts stay out, as does Lee Berridge. So we've got a split in strategy here, and some drivers opting to go for what is the symmetrical race, whereas many decide to go one lap extra. And I think the thought process is that if you have a lighter car for the first stint or towards the very end and a lighter car in the whole of the second stint, you're going to gain more race time. But whilst we do have the pit stop episode going on, how will it play out between Johnson and Anderson? We see cars up on the jacks there for both Johnson and Anderson as they come back down. Well, it's going to be Anderson who's the first down off the jacks there, and he makes one out, and he comes back out in 11th place, 5th in AM. There's Stephen Codman and Mark Johnson. Oh, he's finally coming down to the jacks, but he's got a whole set of tyres on us, Johnson. So that's the difference. He's gone for the full tyre change, as is Dennis Van Beelen. Meanwhile, Anderson and Codman, they've gone for fuel and perhaps just one tyre being altered, if that. And well, that's the change in the story there between them. So will we see now Johnson have to fight his way through it? I suspect so, but on those fresh tyres, once he's warmed them up, surely the confidence has got to be there. But whilst that confidence grows, well, meanwhile, we take a look back at some of the big moments from only months ago, and that does include, of course, what was a bit of a big moment for Kim Such on lap 4. So this was Such making his way along, and as he did so, I believe coming down into Brideside Bend, went onto the brakes here, and the car just went straight to the barrier there. I think that's steering wheel failure for Kim Such, because the car refused to turn, and I think he'd already had a bit of a moment earlier on the lap. This happened earlier for Such. This was coming down, I believe, from Drive Rex into Versiphon. Did he get it wrong here? Yes, he did. Oh, my goodness. And straight into the barrier there, Versiphon. That explains why he couldn't get the car to turn going to Brideside. The whole front left had essentially collapsed. Well, the whole front right collapsed on him with that impact. And suddenly, turning left-handers, it was never going to work. And that explains the story there. My goodness, what a big moment there for Kim Such. And we're having to tow to the pits, understandably. We had this as well for Stephen Codman on lap number 4, and this was going down through the Stefan Beloff S, and as he did so here, well, I think he was doing a bit of rallycross. Oh, goodness me, bounced over the curve there and took a bit more, and in the end, it sent him wide onto the grass, but kept absolutely planted there. That's what you've got to do, keep the throttle down. But then we had this big battle for Reynolds and Kor towards the end of lap number 4, and of course, this was Stuart Reynolds all over the back of Kor, looking one way then the other, and as he looked to go around the outside, down towards the braking zone, well, it was all going to be about who would flinch first on the brakes, and it was Niels Kor in the end coming through Tiergarten, who just won the brakes, the best part of about 5 metres earlier, and Stuart Reynolds able to take the lead. But Kor, of course, then trying to come back at him only months later onto the start of lap number 5. Matias Penttilä playing witness to the battle, the third of the trio, and as they came on down, well, Niels Kor had the speed, he had the pace, he had the confidence. But the problem was, he made his way down towards turn number 1 here with the overspeed. He didn't quite have it on the brakes. He went onto the anchors, but he found very quickly the Mustang with a very heavy front end. Just leant too much onto the brake there, and therefore triggered the ABS and rolled very deep through the corner and had to give back the lead to Stuart Reynolds. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's back to your live racing we go. And well, as we do, still more to come as Dennis Van Beelen's had a bit of a moment, and I believe, well, Van Beelen's had a bit of an impact with the wall somewhere. We are going to try and take a look at what's happened to Van Beelen very shortly. That's happened whilst we've been in replay mode there, and in fact, I think we are going to get a replay straight away, and this was what happens to the Chicane Online Racing driver. So this was on lap number 5. Remember, he just changed all 4 tyres and put a fresh tank of fuel in the car. Made his way through the left hand there of what's that, Van Bogen, and the rear of the car let go. And well, an easy place to get it wrong, but to have it go around like that, that's definitely they're trying to push a bit too hard on cold tyres, particularly that rear right that had not warmed up. So unfortunately for the Mustang driver, losing out there to Mark Johnson, the fresh tyre runner as well of Mark Johnson, who we see now in your live pictures as he carries on. Johnson a little bit wide there for odd now fours, but I think just teasing out exactly where the grip levels are in the car as Kim Such, meanwhile, leaves the pit lanes. The car's fully repaired after its tow. Well done to Kim for getting the car back out there. That fast repair proving handy, and he now makes his way back out in 17th place. Last of your AM runners in 10th, but good to see all the AMs still going as he gradually gets himself up to speed. But we look back to the very front of the field. From the back to the front we go. Stuart Reynolds versus Niels Core, and Reynolds right now making up his way through mud curve, and Core glued to the back of him. This is no stranger to a situation, although it's interesting to see now the shoe on the other foot. Reynolds here having to be Mr. Defense, and meanwhile Core having to be the attacker, or the hunted has become the hunter. But will he be able to hunt successfully? That has got to be the challenge for him at the moment. Or will he want to really make a move, or will he just simply play it patient? That's something he can, of course, do. Just tuck him behind here. Although I don't think he's going to do that with how close he's getting through the carousel, to be fair. I think Niels has got other ideas. I think he wants that position back before the end of the lap if he can help himself, and particularly before he gets into pit lane. And if so, well, that's definitely going to help him out, because track position has proven very critical. But of course, do you really want to be the leader on that last lap going down the Döttinger Höhe? That is a very fundamental question. So we'll have to wait and see what the game plan is there. Matias Penttilä, the man in third, while he's been passed earlier on, his game plan since then has just been to sit behind and stay with the leaders. Could he pull off a bit of a surprising strategy? Could he suddenly find a way to save more fuel than everybody else? And if he does so, could he spring a bit of a surprise? Could he find a way and to essentially leap ahead of everybody? Well, for that and more, we will in due course find out, because those tanks are not going to go much longer. And 9 seconds behind is Benny Abdullah here. Very lonely satellite racing Mercedes at the moment, with a 22.5 second gap to Lee Berridge. Now, as Berridge makes his way around, I think Berridge has been involved in a little bit of a moment, unless I'm mistaken. Well, in fact, I may be mistaken about that. That's just how the gap has grown from 4th all the way through to your 5th place driver. We thought it was a bit tighter than that, but it has grown over the last couple of laps. But Berridge at least doing a very good job at the moment of gluing all the sectors together and not really making any mistakes of boosted motorsport as he heads on down the hill. And indeed, as he comes down from the Eifel Mountains, for him right now, all he's got to do is have the faith that going for this overcut versus the undercut strategy is the way to go. Mark Johnson, well, now that his tyres are up to temperature, the Trackmaster Racing driver will be looking to close down Stephen Codman. Remember, splitting strategy between the two teammates. Codman, fuel and perhaps 1 or 2 tyres changed. Meanwhile, Johnson, fuel and all 4 tyres changed. It will be a difference in strategy that could prove pivotal. And remember the fact that he's got this lap plus another 3 to go. And for Johnson, towards the very end of the race, those fresher tyres will come into a bit of an element of their own, as long as he can get the most out of them. But coming out to Gallencroft Bend very shortly, Reynolds, your leader, has got a gap of 9 tenths to Niels Core. That's been made up through Flansgarden at Irons and Stefan Bellofest. But now, how will that gap come down? Because we look back for the rear of the leading Mercedes, and of course, looking back, there you can see Niels Core. He looks like a bit of a speck, but suddenly a whole second becomes 9 tenths. And then it starts to become 8 tenths as he continues to build that momentum. But now they're almost to the halfway point of the Döttinger Höhe, heading up the hill underneath the Bilstein Bridge. It's now 3/4 of a second, so Core is gaining little by little. We know that Ford Mustang is the king of the straight, so as we did see all the way back in Season 7 at Le Mans, where it's able to absolutely fly in the hands of a couple of our drivers. But right now, Stuart Reynolds safe, it would seem, as they make their way through Tiergarten and Hohenheim. And Matias Penttilä opting not to gain there on the straight, just staying within half a second of Niels Core. So I think he's definitely playing the game of fuel saving. But into the pits they all come, and as they do, we're top 3 are in, and I suspect everyone else who has yet to pit will be making their way in shortly as well. And as they do come on down, while overlay is just going to disappear for a moment, ladies and gentlemen, we are just doing some repair work in the background to our overlay, and I do believe it's going to come back very shortly. And when it does, well, the good news is here it comes back on screen, and all those issues we had earlier on have now been resolved. And we do apologise for that technical glitch. It does sometimes happen, and we've taken those remedial measures. But of course, our overlay is back right in time to see what's going to go down. And Niels Core, Matias Penttilä, and Benny Abdullahi all in, but it's your leading trio that are the big question. Who will be the first out? Well, Penttilä up on the jacks, so is Core. What about Reynolds? They all are up on the jacks there. Reynolds comes down first, being serviced still, and more fuel going into the car. Penttilä, meanwhile, he's come down, so has Core. So they're all only changing 2 tyres by looks of things, and Stuart Reynolds gets back out ahead. Penttilä and Core together here. They give each other space, so that way they can coexist coming out the pit lane. But Matias Penttilä returns to second. So the RD Simsport driver there was slightly quicker pit stop. The delta in the end was literally 6 tenths in the pit lane, and Matias Penttilä was 6 tenths faster stop, moves back into second place. But now, is this what separates Niels Core from his first win? Does it become a battle of 2 Ford Mustangs for second? We'll see, as meanwhile Lee Berridge comes down off the jacks. And John Roberts parked up in the pit lane there, still being serviced, although he's had to reverse back into his pit spot because of the fact he overshot it slightly. So the team couldn't get the jacks up on the car there. Lee Berridge, meanwhile, being serviced, but he starts to leave. Chris James comes out in front. Meanwhile, where's Stephen Codman? There he is. Ian Anderson heads along. Where is Anderson right now? Well, the camera catches up to him. Is Anderson going to jump Berridge here? I think he's going to have a go at this, is Anderson. He's good around the outside into turn 1. He's not quite there, but the gap that Anderson's closed up by pitting a lap before, well, that goes to show that Ian Anderson right now has been holding back a little bit perhaps and playing it smart. Stephen Codman 2 seconds behind. He's not quite had the pace to stay with that top 2. So suddenly, Berridge and Anderson have got into position to battle each other. And Mark Johnson, well, with all 4 tyres being changed, Johnson has fallen to 5th in the AM class. Rob Sharp's got ahead of him there. So that's a big twist in the tail. And Dennis Van Beelen is behind. But obviously he had that mistake coming out onto his out lap. So for Mark Johnson right now, he'll have the freshest tyres to the top 5 in the AM class. But with 3 laps to go, including this one, can Johnson find a way to close this up? Well, Lee Berridge and Ian Anderson are fighting, and with this battle, as we jump on board with the See You Next Tuesday machine, well, the Scotsman in the 455 right now with the Newbridge Racing inspired livery, we should say. Well, he's definitely inspired to look for a move here as he gets the better run coming out to Bilstein curve. Look into the inside, and we'll see where they go up onto the curve, but he just takes too much curve there, and well, some would say he was squeezed, but I think Anderson there, I think he could have cut it a little bit wider from the corner, but he wanted to play it safe and understandably, well, going high on that curve has cost him momentum, but Anderson right now, if he gets this right, he'll be going on the attack. But Stephen Codman has closed up those 2 seconds immediately as a result of Berridge and Anderson fighting each other. So Codman's on the back of this. And suddenly, Anderson now's got to make a choice. Does he try to fight for second, or does he now try to pursue Berridge, but also respect the fact that if Codman gets involved, it actually might be worth letting Codman swap places with him for a little bit to stay in the trio. Because otherwise, Berridge might just be able to reopen a lead. But the more this trio fights, the more they bring this man into the equation. Championship leader in the AM class of Rob Sharp. And well, they could also bring this man on the freshest tyres of them all, Mark Johnson. And the Trackmouse Racing 88 Aston Martin would love a sip of the winner's champagne for the 2nd time this season. Well, Stephen Codman's yet to take a sip of it. He's yet to take a win this season in the AM class. And he's been close on several occasions. He's had the most podiums in the AM class of anybody outside of winners' podiums positions. But right now, for what is the Trackhouse Racing team, that split of strategies, it's definitely creating some intrigue. But let's not forget, we've got other drivers out there as well, including John Roberts, running 6th in the AM class at the moment. 5.5 seconds over Dennis Van Beelen in the hunt for 12th place. You see go for the foreground of the camera shot. But right now, Roberts just doing a good job there to keep it nice and clean on the road. And we also do have Paul Goffin a bit further back in the 164. And well, the Sim Racing Magazine driver, not quite on the pace of the leading AM drivers, but to be fair to him, he's kept it on the black stuff all the way through and doing an absolutely fantastic job. And remember, anybody who finishes this race, I mean, we say about all of our races, to be fair, they all deserve a round of applause, but anybody who gets to the finish in this one, and particularly if they don't have a single off track and just keep it absolutely clean, it's absolutely incredible driving from them. And indeed, conquering the Nürburgring, even if you're right towards the back of the field, is an achievement in the GT4 and in any machine it is. As meanwhile, Ollie Carbadine heads onwards as well. And right now we can see there the Mercedes AMG driver, our round 6 move of the round winner, or the round worthy driver after his earlier incident. He's got the car repaired, he pitted on lap 3, but he has got a daunting 5-lap final stint. And with a very heavy car initially, those tyres are definitely going to be feeling it towards the very end. And I do believe believe in terms of that pit stop, he did not change more than 2 tyres. So Carwadine in the end, now is going to have a set of tyres out there that's going to have very mixed wear rates on it, and that could make this car just a little bit unbalanced to drive. Whereby I suspect they've changed only 2 tyres. They've probably changed the left-hand side tyres because this circuit is clockwise, so it's got more right-handers than left-handers. So it does mean the left-hand side tyres do more work. The outside tyre, of course, on a corner does more work than the inside because of centripetal forces. So there's more wet pressure and force being applied to the outside tyre, and that's what enables the car to grip around the corner. But as we do see Carwadine heading up towards Schreidenkreuz, leaping his way onwards. Right now, your number 14 driver here showing no hesitation at attacking the lap. Heinzmeier, his teammate, meanwhile running in 9th place in the AM class, 16th overall. We had a bit of a difficult moment earlier on. It released the place to Carwadine, and in the end also released the place to Kim Such. But Kim Such should have that big moment at the barrier there, Siphon. And Heinzmeier taking that place back, but right now just keeping it on the road as best he can to try and bring it home at 9th place in the AM class and 16th overall. And then we do have Kim Such, the last of runners at the moment, and we're on the lead lap still. And after his big moment at the barrier, he's got the car towed to the pit lane and fast repaired, and he's still marching on here, which is good to see. But battle building here, Rob Sharp versus Mark Johnson. We look back from the rear of the Burris Racing at 68 Porsche, and right now as he comes on through Bergvert corner, well, he's going to need a good run through. He goes a bit deep on the corner. In fact, this is going to give Mark Johnson a run before they've even got about 500 metres on the corner. And well, what this will do, of course, is it will force Mark Johnson to have to do this on power alone, which the Aston Martin's got plenty of torque, but it does mean he's going to have to use up a bit of extra fuel to do this. He wanted the slipstream to catapult him forward, and Rob Sharp now is going to be very cheeky and tuck back in. So as we ride on board with your AM Championship leader, who falls to 5th place in the AM class. Well, there you can see that Aston Martin pulling away now. It's getting towards the top gears. Rob Sharp's Porsche, meanwhile, grateful for the slipstream, and this Porsche just does not have straight line speed. We've seen it all season, and of course we've heard Paddock Motorsports driver Daniel Perry and also Daniel Osler talking about their struggles. In fact, they go to a circuit packed full of corners, they are smiling, but as soon as they get to a long straight, suddenly all that pace and the smiles go away. Well, Rob Sharp there, grateful to Tyler Johnson, but I suspect Johnson may start to gap him, particularly on those fresher tyres. But then it's 5 seconds up to Stephen Codman, Johnson's teammate. And, well, Codman still in 1.3 seconds of Anderson. And it's a further second to Lee Berridge. Well, Lee Berridge has got to the back of Chris Jennings. And something to point out, Chris Jennings actually got the jump on Berridge, Anderson and Codman through his pit stop. So Jennings has actually used strategy to his advantage, and he has gained effectively 2 places from his pit stop. Well done to the Access Sports driver. And we only took 2 tyres at the pit stop, and he had one of the shorter pit stops to everyone who did the 2 tyre swap. Well, the Ford Mustang driver here, as he rolls his way down the hill, understandably, he's now got the pressure to hold on to that 6th place and really keep the AMs at bay. But Berridge wants to get past as quick as he can, but I wonder if Berridge is preparing perhaps for the run onto the Döttinger Höhe. We've still got a bit of time before we get there, as our drivers come down the hill, making the way down the mountain, and indeed rolling away very shortly towards Brunschen Bend. In fact, they're coming up to that corner now, and then they have got, of course, Flansgaard and Eins after Eins curve, and well, he won't be able to make a move there unless they're both willing to back off completely and show each other the maximum possible respect. It is possible to go too wide through this section they're going on to, but to do so, you've both got to be professionals at driving through this section. You've practically got to be able to do it blindfolded. And on top of that, too wide, it means you've both got to know your limits of how far you can come across the road, which, given these corners will throw the cars around, it's very hard to do so. Even the very best out there can get it very wrong. But as Lee Berridge is followed by Ian Anderson, Stephen Codman now 2.3 seconds behind. Codman is being brought into this, and Johnson's already gained half a second in the space of only a sector. So it does seem as though Johnson right now is going to become the imposing threat as he tries to get closer. Meanwhile, Reynolds and Penttilä make the way down the Döttinger Höhe. And well, here comes Penttilä looking to the inside of the Bilstein Bridge. And well, this will complete lap number 6 in terms of who's the leader. And Penttilä will get ahead, and Reynolds does not fight that. He's playing the game now, which is of to me to you. So if he loses the lead on lap 6, he'll take it back on lap number 7. And we're he might lose it on the final lap. As meanwhile, oh, what's happened here to Mark Johnson? Coming out of the kind of carousel, I believe, and into his Gallencroft bed. He's lost the position to Rob Sharp. He's made a mistake somewhere. We'll get a replay of that very shortly. In fact, he's got a meatball flag for damage. Surely not for Mark Johnson after the gamble on the tyres seems to be working out. He's made an error somewhere. Once comes out shortly is Penttilä, your leader. Going on to lap number 7 has Reynolds and Core for close company. But coming out of the open bend, we look back from there of the RD Swimsport number 12 and the Flying Finn right now, trying to make sure that Reynolds does not get past. He wants that second win of the season. He wants to keep his championship hopes for second place at least alive. Remember, of course, if things finish as they currently stand, Reynolds will be your champion-elect with a round to go. So therefore, all he needs to do is turn up at Road America and make sure he doesn't be mischievous, and he would be your champion. In fact, if he didn't turn up, it'd become his drop score and he would still be crowned champion. But as they make their way into the touring car hairpin, Niels Core behind there. I don't think Niels is out of this one yet. Something tells me the satellite racing driver, he's going to get involved at the end of this lap, going on to the final lap. He's just being patient right now, and that patience definitely building up to a bit of a boiling point, perhaps. Ian Anderson up the inside there, Chris Jennings. So Berridge has made his way past down the Döttinger Höhe, and now Anderson will do the same into turn 1. Does he get the move completely done there? He does, as Jennings in the end tries to look for the switchback, but Anderson sees it coming and says, I'll partner on Apex, thank you very much. You're not having that. But Stephen Quadman now only 2.5 seconds behind. Well, with Mark Johnson in the pit lane for repair work, we'll get a replay of what happened to him very shortly. He has made it to the pits under his own steam power. He has not had to tow to the pit lane, and there's Mark Johnson using that fast repair and makes way back out. But of course, he now slips back to 6th place in the AM class, and John Roberts will be almost 17 seconds ahead. In fact, he'll be 18 seconds ahead by the time he does clear turn number 1. So Johnson now has got even more work to do. But Penttilä, Reynolds, Core, that's your top 3. As they come in towards Hansen back for the 7th time of asking. And, well, you can see there, a little bit of a run deep into the corner from Penttilä. And I think that's now tyre wear started to pick up, and also tied arms and legs. Also, brakes are getting a bit hot, but now in towards Hohenrain they go. And as they do, well, Niels Core watches on as Stuart Reynolds. He pushes as hard as he can. We ride aboard the dashboard here of the number 1 for Fury Simsport and heading up towards Flutplatz. Will he go for it here, or will he wait? Well, I think he's surely got to wait. He'll get the run up to a Schreidenkreuz. In fact, he looks to the inside once, but that's all just a feint there. He's not going to go for it this time. It will be now. Can he get the better run? Well, in fact, he doesn't through Flutplatz. He has to back off quite noticeably. 3 attempts is the gap, but given the fact he had to back off the frontal so much, well, Penttilä actually opens up the gap initially. Now the speed's equalised, but they're already through Postbrooker and in, well, not through Postbrooker, through Cottonborn and up to a Schreidenkreuz they go. And through that left-hander, well, Penttilä carries a lot of speed through there and will just about keeps it together. My goodness me. And well, I think if he'd gone any quicker through the corner there, I think we would have seen Penttilä go to the barrier given the speed he was carrying, but not quite so. But definitely frying the corners as much as possible. And well, again, it just goes to show you how hard these drivers are working and how much it means to them. And coming down through the compression up towards Ardenau Force. Right now, I don't think there's going to be a change here. Under braking, Reynolds gets a bit closer, but it stays as they were. Matias Penttilä, he's still fighting, but Benninger Subslar, he is caught up with Tem, making a bit of an error, I believe, through Flutplatz. We're going to replay that shortly. And once they come towards Ardenau Force, we'll see each Subslar, he looked for a move on his long-term rival. The answer is going to be no. But as things stay static between them for a brief moment, we do take a quick look back in time at what exactly happened to Matias Penttilä. So this was Tem making his way up through Hansen back into Hohenrain, and as he did so, took a lot of curve there, and on the outside of Hohenrain, oh, the car came loose, and in the end the camera was obscured, but I think he had a brush with the barrier. But we need to come away from that, ladies and gentlemen, because we've had a change for lead, and that's at Callan Bend, and Stuart Reynolds has found his way into lead, head of Penttilä and Core. And as they enter Drive at Rex, well, Reynolds decided to make a move at a place that we haven't quite seen anybody make a move so far, and we've made that work out. So Reynolds takes track position lead, but understandably, is that lead going to stay with him going on to the final lap? Can he make a break at this point? That's the thing he's got to do. And, well, as quickly as we missed it, we go back in time to make sure we catch it. This was how Reynolds made the move. And this was going through the run in towards Callan Bend. And as they did, it was a poor run there for Penttilä. He had a bit of a snap oversteer there coming through the right-hander. And Reynolds just tucks at the inside and said, right, I'll take that, thank you very much. Is Penttilä starting to struggle with rear tyre life here? If so, this race could be going from good to bad to worse right now for him very slowly. And tyre wear on that Ford Mustang is looking to be an increasing factor. The Mercedes does wear into its rear tyres as well, but not as much as the Ford Mustang. The Mustang is the heavier car, and that's what really hurts it. The fact when you get that power down, particularly when the suspension is so compressed at some of these corners, saying the tyre goes into full load, and well, that load hurts the tyre massively. They power the well on your live screens now up towards Mut Curve, and we can see the leading trio all fanning out for a little bit. As they fan out, we have had a bit of change, and we had Lee Berridge get ahead of Chris Jennings, of course, and this is how he got past. And this was the move initially made on the run down towards the run of Tiergarten. And it was Lee Berridge going around the outside down the Döttinger Höhe. This was the end of lap number 6. And a straightforward move as that. But what happened to Mark Johnson in parallel? This was how Mark Johnson ended up with a meatball flag assigned to his car. And well, as soon as he came out of in the Schwalben-Schwanz curve and in towards Kleiner Carousel, came out way too soon, and the car just propelled to the barrier, the front bumper going flying off, and that's why he had to make his way to the pits. And I do believe Johnson has been involved in a subsequent incident, and he's had to tow to the pit lane, ladies and gents. I think Johnson's race is over, sadly, so we have lost another driver in this one. We lost Guy Edwards due to heat inside the car, and unfortunately after qualifying so well, Edwards opted not to race due to the risk to his health and also the risk to other drivers. We lost Daniel Osler quite early on what was lap number 2, and we have just lost Mark Johnson from this race, sadly. So the wait for that second win of the season goes on for Mark Johnson, but meanwhile Lee Berridge, he's still got Ian Anderson a second behind, and Anderson trying to take his first win of the season, and Berridge trying to make it 2 in a row. As the council will still strike a bend. Right now Berridge in control, it would seem, and Stephen Codman has fallen back behind Chris Jennings, the battle of the Ford Mustangs. Well, he has been behind for some time, but it does seem as though Codman has slipped back a little bit, run there to get closer. So the real big battle at the moment, apart from the Amley battle, which might be starting to cook itself up onto the final lap, is the battle for overall victory, and 14 seconds behind it, the battle for 4th place overall. Reynolds, of course, well, he wants this 5th win of the season. He wants to be crowned champion today. Of course, he won't receive his crown until the season finale, because that's when everything is said and done. But Reynolds wants to become champion-elect, and right now, he would definitely do so with this result. He's just got to hold on a little bit longer, and he would go into the season finale with 172 points to 123 at Matias Penttilä, and will be comfortably clear and have taken up the margin needed. Meanwhile, if things were to finish as they currently stand between Fury Simsport and Satellite Racing, well, I can tell you that it would be enough for Fury Simsport to wrap up the championship with a round to spare. So therefore, it could be the double here today for Fury Simsport. The overall Drivers' Championship retained and the Teams' Championship sliding into their grasp. But we'll have to wait and see. There's still a lap of this to go. Still the best part of 9 minutes or so of racing here at the Nürburgring, and anything can happen in those 9 minutes, and it normally does so. Reynolds rolls his way through the corners right now. Well, of course, the first thing he's got to deal with is the fact that he's got the long run down the Döttinger Höhe, and this is where now that gap of 7/10, is it going to keep him safe? Is it going to feel as though it's enough of a gap? And, well, we've just had confirmation from Mark Johnson that he has had hardware failure with regards to his car, where the steering wheel was not able to turn, and that's why he's had to tow to the pit lane for what was the second instant. His first instant, of course, going straight on at the Kleiner Carousel. But it's very unfortunate for Mark, and, well, I do believe the first time we've ever had that in the car. You've got to feel for Mark Johnson because of the fact that simply he's just had so much bad luck, and he's going to be clutching on tightly to that first win of the season earlier on, but understandably, things have gone wrong today. But as Reynolds there, find out 7 attempts is not enough to be safe, but nobody wants to make the move this time around. So Penttilä and Core queue up behind, and Reynolds will lead the trio then on to lap 8 of 8, and for our final lap of our penultimate round of the season. But who is going to take victory here today at the Nürburgring Combined? Will it be Reynolds and go on to, of course, take home his 2nd championship title back-to-back as successful defence? Either way it finished, if he was to finish 3rd in this battle, he would still become champion. But right now for Matias Penttilä, championship or not, he wants to make sure he holds on to 2nd, and taking the win would be very valuable, and it'd be his 2nd win of the season. And the home hero of Niels Core, the man who took pole position today, well, he wants his 1st win of the season. He was denied it earlier on, but right now he definitely wants it. But meanwhile, battle for the AM lead as well. Ian Anderson and takes the lead for a brief moment, it would seem, coming down the Döttinger Höhe. Will he be ahead in towards Tiergarten? I mean, Lee Berridge doesn't want to let this go, but he's going to have to let it go. And Anderson does take lead. Well, this is going to be the first lap of the season on track position and strategy that Ian Anderson has led since he made his debut all the way back at Imola. And right now, coming all the way through towards the time line. One more lap to go between these two. But can Anderson become the 5th AM winner this season? Can he become a one-time winner alongside Lee Berridge, Mark Johnson and Paul Goffin? Well, I think Lee Berridge has got other ideas about this, but the boosted motorsport driver is going to need to pick the right place to attack, and Anderson immediately going very defensive there into turn 1, and Berridge being shown that the door's not open there. We ride on board then with Berridge for a bit of time, and the boosted motorsport driver looking one way than the other. If he can get ahead on the Grand Prix loop, that might keep him safe, but then he's got to try and run away for the remainder of the Nordschleife loop until they get to the Döttinger Höhe. So is it better to sit behind and put faith in the straight line speed of that BMW, which we know it's got plenty of it, albeit it is the car as well that at higher speeds that rear end becomes exceptionally loose, much like the Aston Martin in the way, as they head on towards the touring car hairpin. And right now, well, Berridge looking one way then the other, but it's not working out at the moment. He's going to try and go round the outside. He's going to go in. Anderson goes a bit deep under braking there, gets his elbows out to Berridge and says to him, no, I've seen that one coming. You're not going around the outside. And Lee Berridge there try to be a bit inventive, but it doesn't quite work out. Meanwhile, in the battle for fourth place, Benitez Abdullahi has found his way ahead of Matias Penttilä. He's now squeezed his way ahead only months ago. We get a quick replay of that, I do believe, or do we? No, we don't. We come back to the battle for the AM class for a brief moment because it's too wide here, heading up towards the Vidal chicane. And well, Lee Berridge there capitalised on the mistake that Anderson made coming out of Bilstein. And here they go onto the brakes, and Berridge looking around the outside. Anderson defends, so Berridge goes for the cutback instead, falls back into line, doesn't try to force the issue as they head into the Nordschleife loop. But look in the back of the picture, suddenly Chris Jennings and Stephen Codman are coming in here, and it's not the cavalry to the rescue, I can tell you that. Although Ian Anderson sliding all over the road, he's putting himself under so much mental pressure right now, and I think Anderson at this point just trying to keep it together, but he's just got to drive his line at this point. He's now to the Nordschleife loop. If Berridge is going to have to make a move, it should be Berridge who's the one who's got the pressure here, not Anderson. But understanding when it's your first time leading a lap of the race and you've earned it through overtaking on circuit, suddenly going from being the hunted to the hunted, mentally it really does change your perspective of things, and that's what you've got to work your head around. But meanwhile, we come back to the penttle for second place, and here we can see that Penttilä's had a poor run coming out of what was Arenberg, and suddenly Niels Kohr's right behind him, and Stuart Reynolds has a 1.5 second gap. So does that mean that we're going to see Kohr have to really throw moving quickly here, because Reynolds might take this as his cue to break away? We'll have to see as meanwhile coming through Quidderbacker Ho and up towards Flugplatz. Well, Anderson now has got Berridge so close there, into the Flugplatz they go, and Berridge back it off, but he backs it off perfectly there, falls back slightly, 2 attempts of the gap as they then make the way on towards the long stretch up towards Ehrenberg Bend. But there you can see that Berridge right now trying to get closer, but just missing a bit of a gear there, and as a result Anderson is safer. And well, I think for Anderson right now, the See You Next Tuesday drive will be grateful for just a little bit of breathing room as they roll over Schweidenkreuz in towards Ehrenberg, and he is safe at least for the run all the way in towards Odenau Force. That's what he'll be hoping for, as Jennings and Codman are queuing up behind and waiting to get involved, and particularly for Stephen Codman. Can you imagine if he takes his first win of the season in the AM class, stealing it away from both Anderson and Berridge on the final lap? That would be a story to tell the team at Trackmouse Racing, and indeed he would level the number of wins with his teammate Mark Johnson and do it in absolute style. But for him right now, he's got to focus on just staying with the group. And meanwhile, come back to your leaders, Reynolds, Penttilä and Niels Kohr. And as we can see, going into Breisscheid, gap still 1.6 seconds. In fact, opens up a bit more as they roll through the corner. And right now, Reynolds really attacking the lap. What Reynolds is doing at this point, the team has said to him over the radio, Fury Simsport, Stuart, if you're going to make a break, you do it now, because the gap's almost 1.5 seconds, where he's got up to 1.7 seconds on this run up towards Bergvik Korda. If he can get that gap to 2 seconds before he gets to the Döttinger Höhe, he will be safe on that straight. And even though those Ford Mustangs will most likely gradually gain in 6th gear, it won't be enough. Oh! And he loses it coming out of the corner. Does Matias Penttilä, goes a little bit too wide, coming out Bergvik Korda, and the rear end snaps loose. It goes to Barry, suddenly what was 3 becomes 2. And Niels Kohr has been released, but he's 2.2 seconds behind Reynolds, and he's only got half the lap to go. Can Niels Kohr find a way to close this gap down? If so, this is going to be literally half lap magic. I know many say 1 lap magic, but right now for Niels Kohr, he's got half a lap at the Nordschleife. Can he somehow find a way to get that gap down? He's got to get it within 7/10 of a second by the time he gets to the Döttinger Höhe. If he does, he'll be well in attacking distance by the end of the final stretch. If he doesn't, then right now Stuart Reynolds surely will be safe. There's always a question of fuel as well. Have the drivers got enough fuel in the car to get to the end without extra fuel saving, without having to lift and coast aggressively right to the end? But of course, we hope not for that. We want to see this go down to a close battle on circuit. And right now, Niels Kohr is responding. He's already chomped off the best part of 3 attempts. And right now, the satellite racing driver here, I think he's been told on the radio, Niels, just go for it. We're going to go quiet. Just focus on what you can do. And this man, well, he has been denied victory several times this season. And right now, he doesn't want to be denied again. And you can say on strategy, that's what's denied him so far as he goes through post of 147, using all the white line. A bit of run off. There is he fights with the steering wheel coming up the hill in in towards Hoact. And right now, Core is absolutely, I can imagine, he's probably digging his nails into the steering wheel. Well, they say not to be fair, the direct drive will, because if it goes loose, you're going to be breaking thumbs. But right now, I think it means that much to him. And the satellite racing drive is throwing everything at this as he heads on down the hill. But that Mercedes just looks so far away. Meanwhile, the battle of Anderson and Berridge. Well, Anderson has got a way up from Mut curving in towards Still Striker Bend. The gap is a second, but this is now the section of the circuit where Berridge is normally the quicker driver of the two of them when he's in clear air. So I have to see what Berridge can do here. Can he close that gap up? And indeed, if he doesn't, well, Anderson could be safe here to take his first win of the season. And what an achievement that would be. Chris Jennings, and there's Stephen Clodman. And then we do see Dennis Van Beelen getting into the rear of the picture a little bit. Well, he's a bit too far back to get involved with these drives. And Rob Sharp will briefly appear. And we am championship leader. If things finish as they currently stand, his lead would be slightly cut. Indeed, he'd still have a slight lead going into the season finale if our mathematics is correct in the AM class, but it would be a straight-up fight between him and Codman for the honours at Road America. Meanwhile, Benny just has Leiham's good defensive there coming through the run of Ice Curve into Flansgarden, and him so close to the back of it here as we jump aboard the dashboard. The Fury Simsport 312, and we're definitely feeling the Fury right now. Is he just Abdullahi? But Tim can't get close enough there, and going into the Stefan Beloff S at this point, he has to back off. There is no way in, surely, has to go flat out in the run down the hill. But as they roar the way onwards, we have to leave them there for a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen, or do we? Well, not quite at the moment. I think we are going to stay with them just for a little bit longer until they do get to Schwab and Schwann's corner. You can see that gap staying as is. But meanwhile, coming out to Gallenkopf Bend, Stuart Reynolds, 1.7 seconds ahead of Niels Core. Core is throwing everything this lap, but he's only been able to gain half a second over the last half a lap or so. So Core right now not close up here. And well, for Stuart Reynolds, that taste of what is his fifth win of the season, of what will be his second crown in a successful title defence. It is only 2 kilometres away right now on this long straight, and right now for Stuart Reynolds, all he's got to do is now one final braking zone. Niels Core is closed and the Mustang is screaming. The Coyote engine is absolutely going, but German efficiency right now says no to it. And as they head in towards Tiergarten and Hohenrain, when he's looking absolutely in control, Benny just Abdullahi here, Matthias Dem, they're close together, but we'll come back to them, ladies and gentlemen, because for Stuart Reynolds right now, as he makes way for the last couple of corners, it's not just going to be a fifth winner season for the Fury Simsport driver, but he will become your champion-elect for Season 8 of the GT4 Challenge. Stuart Reynolds wins at the Nürburgring, head of Niels Core, your runner-up for Satellite Racing. Matias Penttilä comes home in 3rd place, and then it'll be Matthias Tem, who I believe has found his way up into 4th place, ahead of Benny Abdullahi. And as he comes to the finish line with a win and 4th place versus 2nd and 5th for Satellite Racing, Fury Simsport provisionally will become your Season 8 Teams Champions with a round to spare. That's based on mathematics, but don't quote us on that until the standings are done. And what about the Amley battle right now? Because your top 5 have made their way through, but for Ian Anderson, well, what a day it's been for him today. An impressive qualifying points. His second lap, so much different than his first lap in qualifying, really came alive. But right now, Lee Berridge, 1.3 seconds behind, and Berridge has just not had the run through the final run of the lap. And therefore, for Ian Anderson at this point, all he's got to do now is negotiate 2 corners and a run to the finish line. And as the Aston Martin comes on through, one thing right now for the Scottish driver, I don't think he's going to believe this. Ian Anderson, you are an AM winner this season. You win at the Nürburgring, taking 6th overall, his best result of the season. What a drive for the Scotsman, ahead of Lee Berridge. Run up today in the AM class, but he'll be absolutely happy to have been beaten by a man to take his first win of the season. And Berridge drove a brilliant drive, no doubt about it. Chris Jennings takes 8th overall, a strong performance from the Axis Simsport driver. Stephen Codman finishes 3rd in AM and 9th overall, ahead of Dennis Van Beelen. And Rob Sharp will just miss out on the overall top 10, but he takes 4th in AM. And it means the AM Drivers' Championship, it is a showdown between Sharp and Codman going to the season finale, and it will be approximately 3 points in the favour of Rob Sharp, but understandably, Codman is coming for him. John Roberts comes home in 5th in class in AM and 12th overall, ahead of Paul Goffin, who's got some bit of time to go. But as he makes his way on down the stretch, ladies and gentlemen, well, we'll wait to see him come to line. But just before we do, how exactly did it end between Tem and also Benny Abdullahi? And, well, we're going to get a replay of that very shortly. I think our replay's just cut to the wrong item. And here it is. This is how the two of them end up changing positions. It was the drag race all the way down. And in the end, Matthias Tem just powered his way on past in that slipstream. And, well, it was Idris Abdullahi who couldn't find a way back at him. But as he came on past him, we do come back to your live pictures. And we will see Paul Goffin head to his finish line fine. Let's see the ball home, ladies and gentlemen. They all deserve it. And the Sim Racing Magazine driver bringing on home. 6th place in AM, 13th overall, but well done to Paul. He's made it to the finish. That's going to be a very proud smile on his face. And then we've got another 43 seconds to come before we do get to the roam-worthy machine of Ollie Carwadine. Yes, it's been bruised. Yes, it's been knocked about. But to be fair, without a doubt, Carwadine has not given up in this race after his big shunt to the barrier on lap number 3. When he got it into the pit lane, he got the faster pair on. He opted to go for the reverse strategy of a short opening stint and a long second stint. And it's not going to be the biggest points he's ever achieved in a round, but to be fair to him, it's going to be some points all the same, and it keeps his top 5 hopes in the AM Championship very much alive. As he makes his way through the last couple of quarters, and as he does so, Ollie Carwadine will come home in 14th place here in the number 14 Mercedes. Quite poetic, that one, to finish where his door number says he should. And, well, of course, the door number's making no relevance to where drivers should finish. That's just something expected out of iRacing officials. But the roam-worthy driver comes on home then 14th. And then we have 24 seconds behind his teammate heading towards the line as well of Heinz Mayer. 8th in the AM class. Never gave up, to be fair. And 15th overall. And well done to Heinz for that. He's had a couple of off tracks on his journey today. But in the end, he's on track to finish. And that's exactly what he does. And then we will see just behind, well, it's going to be a little bit of time before we do get to him. Kim Such still heading towards his finish. And well, Kim right now has definitely had, well, the tougher races of many. But as he weaves and winds his way on the back section right now, well, for Kim Such, almost to his finish here. And we will see him home. Goodness me, ladies and gentlemen, what a race this has been. We've had so many brilliant battles, and the final lap really coming to life. And in the end, what a small mistake from Matias Penttilä. But here's the replay of what happened to him from an alternative camera angle. And this was heading in towards Bergvik Bend. And do we get the shot? We actually get quite a nice one here, coming out of the corner. Just got on the power a bit too soon, and the rear of the car let go. And, well, what it looked like on board from Niels Kor's perspective, as they made the way through, the man who was trying to chase after that win, you can see that Penttilä gets on the power really early. It looks like he's got the perfect exit, and suddenly that rear left tyre goes to the high curb, and he keeps it to the barrier there to avoid collecting Niels Kor along the way, and Kor just carrying on. But at the time, understanding Niels Kor wasn't thinking of anything else other than chasing down victory, but ended a little bit too far behind to do so. But coming back to your live pictures, where's Kim Such now making his way up towards what will be Schwalben Bend very shortly. And as he does so, he's not too far away from what will be the Döttinger Höhe, and he's only about 40 seconds away now from his finish. And, well, definitely has been a story of survival for him. But as he comes on through, well, I am hearing, ladies and gentlemen, that we have had, oh, goodness me, we've just had some information fed through to us regarding Matias Penttilä in the fact that the brake pedal inside his car was constantly slipping. So, what we mean by that is the actual part of the pedal that he rests his foot on was constantly slipping upwards and downwards. Every time he went to brake, essentially had the brake pedal trying to go away from him further than normal. So, it meant he's had to spend the whole race trying to deal with a brake pedal that's designed to slide around. But as the drivers make the way onwards, well, we do see Kim Such heading towards his finish now. Not long to go for the Oris Racing driver. And remember, along the way, we did lose Mark Johnson with a technical issue with the car after his big knock to the barrier. And the technical issue coming well after the knock to the barrier, but I wonder if it was influenced by it. We also lost Daniel Osler earlier on as a result of his car not wanting to behave. And unfortunately for Osler, things went very wrong. And we lost Guy Edwards before we went racing due to the fact he decided to retire due to the heat inside the car. They weren't able to get sufficient air conditioning into his McLaren, and therefore we did lose our sole representative of the British manufacturer. There comes Kim Such towards his finish line, and we'll give him a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. He's made it on the lead lap. They all have, those who finished, and the Oris Racing driver will come on home in 16th place and 9th in the AM class. And well done to Kim for making it to the end. Lovely to see there. And as he cools them down, we'll take a brief breather. And I believe Heinz has been waiting for it, to be fair, Heinz Mayer. And that's really sweet. Is Kim going to see it? I'm not sure. I don't think he is going to see his teammate there just around the corner, or his sister team driver. I think he was waiting there to say well done to him. Well, a big well done to other drivers, but only one could win overall and one could win in the AM. And, well, let's take a look back at who exactly took victory, subject to any stewards' inquiries, of course. And as we can see, after an absolutely terrific 8 laps of racing in our Nürburgring special round for round number 7 of 8 in Season 8 of the Sim Racing Magazine GT4 Change, brought to you on iRacing and powered by Oris Digital, Stuart Reynolds, your winner, taking his 5th win of the season for Fury Sim Sport and now becoming your champion-elect, a 2-time champion of the GT4 Challenge, and doing so with aplomb today. But he was chased every step of the way by Niels Kaur for Satellite Racing and Matias Penttilä for RD Simsport, with Matthias Tem and Benny Abdallah also getting involved. But Niels Kaur in the end was the biggest challenger to Reynolds today, but unfortunate strategy, it didn't work out for Kaur, and once again the pesky RD Simsport machine of Penttilä found its way between them, and Kaur in the end ran out of time to try and take that win back. Still for Kaur, a second place once again, but understandably his home circuit, he'll feel a bit disheartened by that. And then in third place, Matthias Penttilä with definitely a bit of a wonky brake pedal as we found out, but the flying fin for RD Simsport completing the top three after his big moan out of Bergwerk on the final lap. Matthias Tem at full for Fury Simsport, fend off Benny Abdallah, and with that first and full versus the second and fifth for Satellite Racing, Fury Simsport are our champion-elect now in the Team's Championship, subject to confirmation, but we do believe they've done it on points for a round to spare. Ian Anderson, your AM winner today. His first AM winner season for CDX Tuesday. He's been a podium finisher this season, but never a class winner. But that changes today, finishing only 1 second ahead of Lee Berridge, who was 7th for Boosted Motorsport. And then we did see Chris Jennings in 8th place at Axis and Sports, mixing up with the AMs and having his best drive of the season so far. Stephen Codman, 3rd on the AM podium for Trackmouse Racing, couldn't quite match Anderson and Berridge over the and but in the end, completed the podium and took 9th place, ahead of Dennis Beelen for Chicane Online Racing, who completed the top 10, and they further 10 seconds behind. Codman's main target to beat Rob Sharp was achieved, with Rob Sharp finishing in length there, best of the rest of Boris Racing, a 4th in the AM class, and known it practically puts the two of them on a level playing field going to Road America. John Roberts, 12th there for Boosted Motorsport, ahead of Paul Goffin, and then we did see Ollie Carbadine, Heinz Mayer, and Kim Such complete our finishers of the race. The RS Racing drive in the end 2 laps ahead of the retired Mark Johnson, Trackhouse Racing Aston Martin, and also did see retired Sapanet Motorsports Daniel Osler, and also a non-start for Guy Edwards for 6 Motorsport. But how they finished in the AM class then, because of course we do have our AM class championship to consider, and they score points based on their AM finishing positions in this one, not their overall positions, and Ian Anderson will take the 25 points to see you next Tuesday, and that's going to move him right into the midst of the top 5, right at a critical stage, and can he potentially suddenly really push himself into that 4th place at the end of the season? Well, it's 1.1 seconds ahead of Lee Berridge for Boosted Motorsport, who seemed to run out of pace right at the end, and I just wonder if his BMW's tyres were just a bit too hot and a bit too worn down, but well done to Lee for bringing home another podium, if not quite back-to-back wins, and Stephen Quadman, the wait for his first win still goes on for Trackmouse Racing. But today, at least, he put on a brilliant effort to come home in 3rd and beat the man he needed to of Rob Sharp for Boris Racing, who finished 4th. He was 12 seconds behind, but 5 seconds in turn ahead of John Roberts of Boosted Motorsport, with the team bringing home one of their best pairs of results this season. And Paul Goff in 6th place there for SRM. A further, what was almost a minute behind, but ahead of Ollie Carbadine for Rowan and his teammate Heinz Mayer, who took 8th. And it was RS Racing's Kim Such, who completed the AM finishing order, and it was 2 laps down. The retirement sadly for Trackmouse Racing's Mark Johnson with a technical issue with the car. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our rundown of the results subject to any stewards' inquiries and what a round it has been. But let's not tarry, because we've got some interviews to come up with our drivers, so we'll be back in approximately 5 minutes' time. And in the meantime, do let us know what's been your favourite part of today's racing at the Nordschleife and around the whole of the Nürburgring Combined. But we will be back very shortly, ladies and gentlemen, for our post-round interviews. Don't go anywhere, you won't miss them. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it's time to kick off our post-round interviews. And who better to kick off with today than Niels Core, our leading challenger for the win. Unfortunately, didn't quite bring it on home, but brought together an absolutely incredible pole lap. And he joins me now in the interview room. Good evening to you, Niels. What a day it's been for yourself. Not quite the first win that you've been chasing all season long, but so close to it. But the flip side of the coin, you've definitely proven you are the ringmeister when it comes to a single lap around here. How's the Nürburgring left you feeling?
Good evening, Paul. Yeah, I was definitely happy about that pole position for once. But yeah, in the race, after all, congrats to Stuart. He did an amazing race, Matias as well. And yeah, unfortunately, I was close to the win, but in the end, it wasn't quite enough.
Well, close, but not quite there. But still, let's talk a little bit about that qualifying lap. I mean, a good lap at the Nürburgring Nordschleife in itself is an achievement. But in the end, you took pole position by, I think, just shy of 2 attempts for an absolute brilliant lap. How was it for you? I mean, is this a circuit you love lapping, or is it a circuit you've really had to go away and study to figure out how to get it all together?
I really love the strike. I've done so many laps on this already and races as well. So I'm kind of used to it. The Mustang itself was new for me on this track. I have never driven it here before. And it was definitely a bit of a challenge to get it working around here. But I managed to do it in the end. For the qualifying, you just have to make sure on the first lap to not overdo it. So you have some tires left for the actual faster lap. And then I'm also usually not trying to push over or not even 100%, because if you do that, it's very likely that you just end up losing a lot of time. And that was the key for me there.
Oh, without a doubt. And it worked out in being smooth and simple with your lap and delivering absolute perfection when it came to that pole position. When we did go racing, however, it looked so it was quite close at the start between yourself and Matias Penttilä. And at least for the opening couple of laps, it looked as though yourself and Matias were really controlling the race. But then suddenly, it is none other than Matias Penttilä who comes into the scene, and Stuart Reynolds gets involved as well.
Yeah. Actually, after Matias Penttilä managed to overtake Matias Penttilä, I started to pull away. But after, I'd say, lap 3, my front tires were not doing well anymore. And I started dropping pace quite a bit. And then Stuart was making some moves and got ahead eventually. And yeah.
Well, unfortunate with regards to the tyre wear situation. Now, of course, we did see most drivers who come into the pit lane decide to only change, I think it was 2 tyres and put the fuel in. Was there any temptation to potentially change all the tyres, or did you think that's going to cost me too much time?
That was not really a possibility for me. You would lose way too much time if you took all 4 tyres. So I did decide to only change the front tires, as they seem to have the most wear also in the practice I had done. Although I already saw in the box when I looked at the tire wear I actually ended up with after the first 5 laps, that they were actually in better shape than what I had expected. So after coming out of the pits, the last 3 laps, there was a bit of an imbalance in the car. The front was obviously working again quite well, but the rear just wasn't following along at all. So every time I tried to attack a corner a bit more, the car would just instantly try to snap. And so I just had to always do a lot of small corrections, which did cost quite a lot of time as well.
Well, it's very unfortunate there with regards to that imbalance, like you say, in the car. Although I do have to ask, when we saw you coming on lap 5 and we saw the majority of the lead pack come in, was there no temptation into coming on lap 4 to split the tyre wear 50-50 in the race?
That's obviously a thought I had. The problem with that strategy is that you might always end up behind slower cars who had not stopped yet. And depending on if you can pass them right away or not, which can be quite an issue on the Nordschleife, you might just lose 2 seconds on one lap. So it wasn't really an option, I'd say.
All fair play, but what was not also an option was the thought of you chasing after Stuart Reynolds, and we did see coming out of the pit lane Matias Penttilä, as he seems to have this habit of doing to not just yourself but many a pro driver, got the jump on you coming out of the pit, and I mean, we could see that it just pushed you a little bit more to go on the attack, and goodness me, did you try to attack him for that second place?
Yeah, I was really trying. I was kind of hoping that he would be able to just stay close to Stuart, and I just would be the lucky third on the last lap. But unfortunately, on the last lap, Matthias' tires just gave up completely, and Stuart was able to pull away. And then once I got past, it was already too late. The gap was already too big to make that time back up.
Well, it's very unfortunate because we did see once you did clear Penttilä when he had his moment at Bergwerk, it was almost as if a different version of you took over the car. So you rode on board for a bit, and coming down from the Eifel Mountains, you were absolutely attacking every corner. But like you say, it wasn't quite enough to bring that gap down in the end. So does that mean now we have to wait until Road America for you to take your first win of the season?
Well, I would definitely like to. Road America has also usually been a track where I'm fairly decent at, but I mean, I'm not gonna lie, Stuart is just a really, really quick driver, and it's yeah, just even Alex last season wasn't able to beat him at all times, and yeah, it's not gonna be easy, but I will obviously try my best.
Oh, we look forward to you giving you all at Road America in 2 weeks' time to send off your season on a high. But just before we do let you go, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast?
Yep. Big shout out to Satellite Racing, all of the SRM organizers, you obviously, Paul, for the great broadcasts, and then also to my teammate Ben, and also to Dennis.
Oh, well, I'm sure the SRM admin team plus also Dennis will all appreciate the shout out, as will your friend Ben. But with that, Nils, thank you very much for joining me for an interview. I appreciate it didn't quite work out the way you wanted it to today, but it was great to see you deliver a monster pole lap and push so hard to win, but second in the end, still a well-deserved second place. We look forward to seeing whether you can take that win at Road America. But until then, my friend, have a lovely rest of your evening.
Thank you.
So here and there, ladies and gentlemen, from Nils Core, and understandably after taking that incredible pole lap, and really good of him to talk about the fact that in the end, not pushing to his maximum when he took that pole lap, because he didn't want to push the tyres too hard, and really explaining the fact that to do a good lap around the Nürburgring, you don't want to overdrive the car. You need to be smooth with the car. And in the race, well, as he said, he thought he was going to be able to make the break, and we did see the fight between Penttilä and 10 behind him, but unfortunately by the end of lap 3, his tyres had just been pushed a little bit too hard on the front, and suddenly the pace was falling away from him and into the clutches of his rivals. He did think about potentially splitting his strategy symmetrically, but he was worried about the risk of being caught up with those drivers who had yet to pit, so therefore he decided to play it safe and lost out to Penttilä in the pits on fuel, and that threw an extra obstacle in the way for him to try and chase down Stuart Reynolds. And he cleared Penttilä on the final lap, but it wasn't enough, and well, now he looks to Road America to take that win. He's chasing so hard, he wants it, you can hear it in his voice. Will he get it in the US of A? We'll have to wait and see. But with that, ladies and gents, we come to our second interviewee, and we'll be right back to go to the AM class. And so, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to have joining me now in the interview room a first-time winner in the AM class. Please welcome Ian Anderson to the interview room. Ian, good evening to you. Your first AM win on the board at the Nürburgring of all places. I mean, how does that sound?
It's perfect. I'm so happy, really, really happy that I've managed to well, put a race and a strategy together that actually, well, worked. You know, it worked really well, and I drove really well as well. So I'm so over the moon. It's great.
Oh, fantastic. I mean, definitely you put it all together in the end. And let's start off by talking about qualifying a little bit, because we've seen this season your one-lap pace has gone from being around about 6th to 7th in the AM class to pushing towards the top 5 and then pushing towards the top 3. But here today, it was almost as if lap 1 was just the teaser of what was to come in lap 2. So you suddenly sprung all the way up into 3rd place in qualifying.
Yeah, well, me and the Aston, we're not best of friends. Yeah, we've got a bit of a love-hate relationship. So when the tires are a bit cold, I'm scared of it basically. So I did the Nuremberg Endurance Championship at the weekend. There, I did 2 races on the Sunday. So cold tires, I was very much aware that cold tires is just nice and easy, and it was a good lap. I thought, I pushed quite hard. I thought on my first qualifying lap, and the second one was just came together nicely. It was good.
Oh, definitely.
But yeah, you're right. Previously, my qualifying is not my strong point. That's for sure.
Well, it's definitely becoming one of your strengths now as the season has gone on. And when we did go racing, we saw a bit of a race where you started off quite casually, I'd like to think, but then as time went on, you started to turn the pace up. Was that always the plan?
No. I changed front tires at the pit stop, and then it was all a bit new to me, and I was really just holding on, to be honest with you. It all got a bit slidey. So, they say loose is fast. I guess it must have been fast. But yeah, I did notice some of the times were good. I think I was always lucky. I always managed to be behind a car, and I think that kind of kept trouble. A bit of drafting.
Oh, indeed. I mean, it's interesting you should say about the fact that towards the end the tyres were going. We did see when you were taken the lead. I mean, I have to ask, you've always been the hunter this season, chasing after top 5s and then podiums. Did it feel a bit weird to take the lead going onto the final lap at turn 1? You made it, and then it's almost as if when you went onto the Nordschleife loop, the rear of the car was letting go. And I even said it myself on the commentary saying, you've just got to calm down the car, because it's almost as if you've suddenly gone, I'm leading now. What do I do with the lead of the race?
Well, I knew Lee was quick. I didn't think I'd be racing him at all. So when I came, I sort of came down the home straight there, and there he was coming out of the pits. I thought, now is my chance. I'm going to take it, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. So when I did get the lead, I did panic a bit, because I knew I was weak in the stadium section. So I decided I would just defend, because I saw him struggling a little bit with left-handers, and I thought, well, that's probably me as well. My tires are gone as well, so I'll just do the defensive, and I was okay. It was safe. It was safe. It was no. I think we touched once, but that was it. Yeah, I just went full force defend and decided I'd be okay. Once I got sort of on the Nordschleife itself, it was just like driving the street stock, the back end just sliding, swinging around all the time. It was yeah, I thought I'd be okay once I got on the open road.
Oh, well, it definitely looked so. As soon as you got into Nordschleife loop, like you say, you looked a lot more comfortable and were able to open up that gap to the very end. And I can imagine coming down the Döttinger Höhe for the final time, seeing you had opened up a gap of almost 2 seconds to Lee. It must have felt like a dream come true through those final few quarters.
Yeah, it was a great relief. It was tough. It was really tough, and Lee drove really well. We were talking about it in the booth there. It's just the tires just get a bit scary sometimes around there. It's dangerous, a dangerous track.
More scary tyres and the scary nature of the Nürburgring, but it didn't stop you in the end from bringing home that win, and it means you go to Road America in our season finale, now well within a shot of a top 5 in the championship this season of the AMS. What's the game plan at Road America?
I'll turn a lap of a track that I've never even knew existed before I bought it. Well, before I played iRacing. So yeah, we shall see. I'm not hoping for much, but it's a great track. It's an infamous track, so I'll need to just get into it, get stuck in, get learning. Yeah, I'm sure it'll be fun.
Oh, brilliant. I absolutely love that mentality, to be fair, and we look forward to seeing you get stuck in and see whether you can perhaps end the season on another podium, at least, if not another win. But
yeah.
Just before I do get ready to let you go, is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast?
Just you guys for running the league. Thank you very much. It's great to watch the the broadcast, after the fact, and the camaraderie with the guys is really good. So I'm really enjoying it. Thank you all.
Ian, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you join me in the interview. Congratulations once again on your maiden AM win. It's an incredible result, an incredible track. I mean, we couldn't ask for a better way to wrap up the AMs at the Nürburgring. Well done once again, and we'll see you at Road America.
Thank you.
So hearing there from a very happy Ian Anderson, ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you one thing, absolutely ecstatic. You can hear it in his voice, but also I think it's just dawning on him a little bit with regards to what has happened and being able to make that achievement. But mentioning the fact that he actually felt quite happy with his first qualifying lap, and the second one just came together even more so, but also reflects on the fact that he has got quicker in qualifying, which has typically been one of his weaknesses. In the race, he mentioned about the fact that in the end was great form. One of the key advantages he had in the race was he was always behind another car, so therefore his pace was able to stay at a relatively stable state. And we did see that anybody who was behind another car, particularly in this condensed AM and Pro pack of the likes of Stephen Codman, Mark Johnson, Chris Jennings, also in there Lee Berridge, Dennis Van Beelen, all of them together, and suddenly they're able to leech time off each other. And Ian mentioning that after that pack sort of broken up and the strategy started to play out, he decided to go all in for it. He knew he had to go for the move, otherwise it was never going to potentially happen, and he went for it. It worked out, and so long as he could be ahead going into the Nordschleife loop and get the rear of his Aston Martin settled down, he would be in control. And that's what he exactly did for that first win, a great first win. But now he's got to learn a whole nother circuit. He's got to learn Road America, circuit he hadn't even heard of before iRacing. Well, I'll put my hand up and say that makes two of us. I'd not heard of Road America before I bought the iRacing simulator and the circuit on there. And well, our 455 driver, if he can put all that practice together, there's no reason why he can't end the season on back-to-back wins. But ladies and gentlemen, with that, we've got one more interview to come. We're staying in AM. You may be able to guess who we're coming to. We'll be back very shortly. And well, if we're going to hear from our AM winner today, it's only appropriate we hear from our AM runner-up, because joining me now in the interview room is none other than Lee Berridge of Boosted Motorsport. Lee, good evening to you. So close, so very close to back-to-back wins, but in the end, Ian Anderson just took it from you, but you must have enjoyed that.
Oh yeah, I enjoyed that. Do you know what? I'm a little angry with myself because I messed up in the pits. I took the wrong side on the tyres. But you know what? I can't be that angry because Ian gave me a fantastic race, and thoroughly deserved. Can't really criticise too much. That was a thoroughly enjoyable race.
Oh, fair play. Now, we'll come to the strategic blunder a little bit later, but let's talk about qualifying first. Pole position in the AM class as 7th overall. You must have been very happy about that because it came out of nowhere on our timing tower.
Do you know what? I don't know where that came from because the opening of the lap, I really struggle. I know I normally say with you that I seem quite good on cold tyres, but here, you're too nervous. Too many, you don't want to get an off track, don't want to push too hard and then plough it into a wall. So I think the start of the lap, I took it a little bit too easy, and I gave myself a lot to do at the end. I was watching my delta. I think I was firmly sort of 2.5 seconds in the red, and whilst I didn't claw that back, it was enough. It was enough. So yeah, pulled that one out the bag.
Well, a magical lap pulled out the bag, like you say, and then going into the race. Now, we've just heard from Ian, who gave us a really interesting point, that in the battle throughout, you were controlling the AM lead for the most part of the first stint, but because you had, say, Dennis Van Beelen amongst you two had a bit of a scrap there, plus also Mark Johnson was close, we saw Ian get involved, Chris Jennings and Stephen Codman. It was almost as if you had to lead a whole pack of cars around the Nürburgring. Were you a bit annoyed that perhaps you couldn't get away from it all?
Yeah, a lot of it came down to we were just jostling, and all I wanted to happen was to let Dennis come by and him to hold the pace and just tow me along, because I needed to fuel save, and I just needed that draft up the up the hills, up the straights, and I just thought use that to gap them. And yeah, they kept messing up. What was up with them? They're supposed to be pro drivers. They couldn't keep it on the track. So yeah, that kind of slowed me down too much. And yeah, once I had Mark in my slipstream, fuel saving and all sorts. But do you know what? It's such a long lap. There's so many opportunities. I'd sooner be the hunted rather than hunting. So yeah, I'm a lot happier. I know this track so well, so I could almost drive it blind. So that didn't concern me. But, you know, being sort of 6 inches from someone's bumper and not seeing the track, that's even scarier.
Oh, 100%. Like you say, when you do have that situation, how scary it can be. And coming on to strategy then, so I presume there was a plan to change 2 particular tyres, but it wasn't the right ones that did get changed.
No, so I stuck to my strategy, but I'd done 2 race distances this week, and on both occasions, changing both left tyres, front left, left rear, seemed the best. When I got to the end of the stint, the tyre wear on all 4 corners had sort of balanced out and it was about even. So I figured, okay, the left are taking a bit more of a kick, so I'm going to change the lefts, I'm going to stick with it. As soon as my car came to a stop and I had my tyre wear indicator, I had the horrific view of what my front right tyre was at, and I thought, I've got to nurse this for 3 laps. I think my inside edge was down to 59%.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it was horrendous. And I came out the pits, and then I had Ian behind me, and every left-hander, the thing just didn't want to turn. And when you've got that disparity between what the left's doing, what the right's doing, you know, right-handers, I was absolutely fine. I was railing them, but left-handers, I was having a break early and sort of slow in, fast out, and I think that's really where Ian sort of clung on to me. And then I started playing the tactical game. I thought, okay, that's fine. Second to last lap, the penultimate lap. I thought, you come past. I'm going to stick in your toe. I know exactly what I'm going to do. I'll draft you down Döttinger Höhe and I'll win the race. But I just had no tyres left. And once he got to 1.5 seconds, that was it. So, you know, but I was chatting with him in the booth, and, you know, he just looked after his tyres better than I did, or he was able to drive better on worn tyres. So, you know, hats off to him. But, you know, I'll take P2.
Oh, indeed. There's nothing wrong with second place, like you say, in the fact that you really did drive so well for it. And with regards to the battling between the two of you, of course, we did see quite a bit of back and forth. But this BMW, I mean, we've seen a lot of drivers trying to pick it up over the last couple of seasons, and not many have been really able to get to grips with it. But it seems like yourself and the BMW are just a match made in heaven.
Yeah, do you know what? Every single time I drive the BMW class in the GT3 or GT4, I just seem to click with it. I think the problem I have is that when I've chosen it before, I always choose it at a bad time, and I end up struggling. It ends up being one of the weaker cars. But do you know what? It suits my driving style. It rotates on the rear quite a lot. I've said it before. I've got good feel to it, and I like a car that I can almost oversteer to the apex rather than having to work to, like, the Mercedes is awful. That thing doesn't rotate. That needs lots of lock to get the thing to turn in, and it just doesn't suit me. So I don't go with it. But yeah, I get on with the Beamer. We're friends.
Well, having that friendly relationship with the BMW has proven very valuable thus far, but with a second place today, it means points-wise, you go to the season finale at Road America, well within chance of a top 5 in the AM Championship. How are you feeling for our season finale?
Disappointed, because had the start of my season opened like I'm finishing it, I reckon I probably could win with a shot of the AM Champ. But I'm in the same situation as last time. I'm meant to be working, and I'm deliberating whether or not do I take a night off to come and race the final round, or to just skip it and focus on next season. But we'll see.
Well, I can tell you one thing, if you were to skip the season finale, as much as we'd understand, we would massively miss you and your mastery in the BMW, but that's not peer pressure on you, Lee, I promise, but pretty pleased with pleading eyes, I can say, on the behalf of the SRM admin team. Nonetheless, as we get ready to let you go, is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast?
I think I'm going to shout out on the YouTube channel to a family member, Bright Star Fox, that joined us for the evening and clearly watched it all night. So thanks to that. And I think finally, thanks to you, and final congratulations to Ian Anderson. Thoroughly deserved win.
Oh, I tell you, Lee, that Bright Star Fox has definitely been enjoying the broadcast tonight, enjoying seeing you do so well. And if you do join us for Road America, we very much look forward to it. But if you don't, completely understandable. But either way, congratulations on another podium for yourself today at the Nürburgring. And we look forward to seeing you in the near future. But until then, have a lovely rest of your evening.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. You take care.
So hearing there from Lee Berridge, ladies and gentlemen, and well, great to hear from him, and really magnanimous in defeat in the fact that admitting there that in the end it really came down to such fine margins between himself and Ian Anderson. Mentioned the fact the pole lap really surprised him in terms of surprising all of us there, bringing it together, but this harmony he has with the BMW is something that so few have been able to yield out of it. But it seems that Lee Berridge has found it, and as he mentioned, if he'd been able to get these results earlier on in the season, he would 100% right now be right within a shot of the AM Championship crown. But as it stands, the best mathematically he can achieve in theory, I believe, is third in the championship, which isn't bad given the way the first 3 rounds went versus how it's been in the previous 3 rounds. Still, here today, he was, of course, potentially make it 2 wins back-to-back, but it was a bit of a mix-up in the strategy element with regards to changing the wrong tyres. And as a result, he definitely had to struggle through left-hand turns all the way to the very end. He had all the grip on right-hand corners, but not on left-hand corners. And that hurt him quite considerably when he needed that grip most. But still, a straight-up fight between himself and Ian Anderson. And in the end, Anderson did take it. And Will Berridge, if he does turn up at Road America, I suspect Lee is going to be very eager to try and get his second win and put one over Ian Anderson, indeed the whole of the AM class. But if not, preparations already underway in his mind for Season 9. That'll be absolutely great to see him back out there once again. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, well, we look forward to his next story, whether it's in this season or the future one. But that concludes our run of the interviews for today. And let's give you a quick reminder of who we've spoken to. And today we've had 3 interviews with Pro and Am drivers. Firstly, we start off in the Pro class with Niels Core from Satellite Racing, his number 42 machine. And we had the opportunity to catch up with him and talk about was that brilliant pole lap, but unfortunately not quite able to bring home the win at his home circuit, just missing out with the way strategy and the battles on track played out. And then we came to a first time Am winner in the form of Ian Anderson for See You Next Tuesday. A very proud moment in his season career, bringing home that brilliant win, and in the end making himself very proud and surprised himself with how well it went today, but also keeping a cool head when it mattered most. And then we caught up with the number 41 from Boosted Motorsport of Lee Berridge, who was talking about the fact, surprised himself with his pole lap, and in the race seemed very happy with how things were progressing, although ideally wanted the pack to calm down a little bit and wanted drivers to make a break, or for himself to make a breakaway. But that, plus also what was a slight mix-up in strategy, just cost him the opportunity to potentially make it a runaway win. But still, well done to him, and well done to all 3 of our interviewees for their brilliant performances, and well done to all of our drivers for taking on the tantalising test of ability that was the Nürburgring Combined. And well, we look forward to plenty more interviews with our drivers in our season finale at Road America in 2 weeks' time. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you're sat there right now and thinking that you would like to be on the grid, not necessarily perhaps for this season, perhaps you're thinking, is there going to be a Season 9? We can definitely tell you we'd love to run a Season 9. We've already got thoughts underway for that, and we'd love to see you on the grid if you're thinking about it. If you enjoy GT4 racing and you want a very comfortable environment to go racing in, whereby you don't have to be an esports professional to enjoy good old racing, you just have to be a gentleman or a lady racer, well, definitely get on the grid by joining the official Sim Racing Magazine Discord. Invite link available on screen. You won't find a more welcoming and also friendly community to go sim racing with. We'd also like to take a moment to say a big thank you to our series sponsor before we wrap up, and that is, of course, Oris Digital. And small teams can make a huge impact in the digital marketing and e-commerce space, and Oris Digital knows that best. With 20 years of collective experience in growing businesses through online marketing channels via the provision of services that include affiliate management, Amazon marketing, and digital strategy, Oris Digital delivers tangible results to its clients. So if you'd like to know more about how Oris Digital can help you grow your business, be sure to head to their website today at www.oris.digital. But we'd also like to take a moment, ladies and gentlemen, to say a shout out to one of our series partners, and that is Oboris Watch. One of our drivers, Rob Sharp, runs Oboris Watch, which designs and markets watch faces for smartwatches running Google's Wear operating system, or Wear OS. This SRM-themed watch face that you see on screen is available on the Google Play Store by just searching for GT4C. It features a pit board that includes your race position, which improves as you near your step target for the day, a racetrack with selectable colours for each sector, and the trademark SRM branding along with other useful information such as heart rate, so you can manage your excitement level in the next SRM race. If you'd like to know more about Oboris Watch's watch faces for smart watches, why not head to their website at www.oboris.com. And we'd also lastly like to take a moment to say a shout out to one of our other series partners, and that is Roamworthy. Buying the perfect caravan, motorhome or camper van can be an activity which leaves you going around in circles, but not with Roamworthy. Built by technology people who love the road, Roamworthy provides you with the tools you need to put you in the fast lane to buying the caravan, motorhome or camper van which meets your requirements via a website that is packed with real stock and no pushy sales personnel. So if you'd like to know more, be sure to head to www.roamworthy.co.uk today. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that's all we've got time for today, and we've got one more round to come. And next time out, on Tuesday the 9th of June 2026, it is our season finale showdown at Road America in the US state of Wisconsin. We have our champion-elect in the overall championship in the form of Stuart Reynolds. We have our champions-elect in the team's championship of Fury Simsport, subject to all the maths being done and any stewards' inquiries. But we also have a question outstanding. Who will be our runners-up in those championships? And also, perhaps more importantly, who will be our AM champion? Will it be Rob Sharp? Will it be Stephen Quadman? Or can somehow Mark Johnson find a way to squeeze his way in the mix should results go his way? Well, there's only one way to find out, and save the date, Tuesday the 9th of June. That's where we'll bring the curtain down and formally crown our champions at Road America at the high-speed, high-thrill circuit. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, we have been at the Sim Racing Magazine GT4 Challenge. I've been your host and commentator, Paul Walsh, and until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and as always, remember to stay cool, and most importantly, like our drivers, remember to stay on track. Good night.